them.
Okay, I'm calling to order the Panama City Commission meeting for August 12th, 8 a.m. We're going to start by a prayer from Reverend Smith, Senior Pastor of New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Granger. Please rise.
Good morning, everyone. Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this day, a day that never was, never will be again. We thank you for our mayor and our commissioners and our city manager and attorney and everyone that makes up this body. We pray today, God, for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. We pray that everything that is done behind these chamber walls will be done decent and in order. We ask right now for peace, love, and joy. We pray for our city. We pray for those, Lord God, that are less fortunate, that are not able to even pray for themselves. God, we ask right now that you would intervene into this our agenda. We ask that you take charge of this agenda, and we ask right now again that everything that is done will be done decent and in order. We give you honor, we give you glory, we give you praises for being God and for being God all by yourself. We thank you in Jesus' name. We pray and ask it all. Amen.
Amen. You'll join me in the pledge? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't think so.
All right, Ms. Smith, call the roll.
Mayor Branch?
Yes, here.
Commissioner Hughes?
Present.
Commissioner Lucas?
Present.
Commissioner Granger?
Present.
Commissioner Street?
Present.
Mayor, you have quorum.
Thank you. You've received the meeting minutes for July 22nd and the budget workshop for July 22nd. I have a motion to accept.
There he is.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Commissioners, do I have any additions, deletions, or modifications, or staff?
One from staff, Mr. Mayor. Item 10 Bravo. Item 10 Bravo regarding customer service operations. We request that be moved to August 26th. I was out on travel last week, and I still need to sit down with the clerk and just work through a couple more items. So request that get moved again, item 10 Bravo to 8/26.
Anything else?
I'll motion we approve the agenda with the exception of moving 10 Bravo to August 26th. Second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Proclamations. Florida Water Professionals Month. Come forward. Just one person. Awesome. Okay. Don't trip over the cord. Yeah, make us look. We don't have to speak a little closer. The Florida Water and Pollution Control Operators Association, organized in 1940, is a nonprofit trade organization that promotes the sustainability of Florida's water utility industry through workforce development to protect the health of Florida citizens and preserve the state's water resources. And this organization offers water and wastewater treatment plant operators and water distribution operator training courses required for the state of Florida operator's license, 8 voluntary certification programs, and continuing education programs for operator licenses and renewals. The State of Florida and Pollution Control Operators Association recognizes all who have played a significant part in operating and maintaining drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater systems in Florida by celebrating Florida Water Professionals Month, which applauds the constant efforts to protect our health and environment. Florida water professionals are essential first responders as defined by Florida Statute 403.865B, if you want to look it up. During storm and other catastrophic events, working to ensure safe drinking water and safe disposal of wastewater for our communities. I, Alan Branch, as virtue of the authority vested in me as Mayor of Panama City, Florida, do hereby proclaim August 2025 Florida Water Professionals Month. Oh, yeah, proclamation. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Right, community announcements. After a brief pause during the summer, our Parks, Culture, and Recreation team is excited to offer Sunset Yoga every Thursday from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. starting August 14th. And make sure that's on your calendar, Mr. Mayor. Bring your yoga mat, towel, and water to enjoy an hour of movement and mindfulness at Oaks by the Bay Park. The Panama City Charter Review Advisory Board met for the first time last month to review its responsibilities and process for soliciting feedback for changes to the city's charter. Members are assigned to, or were assigned rather, to review the current city charter, research other municipalities' practices, and begin community outreach. The next meeting will be on September 4th in the Executive Conference Room at City Hall, and it will focus on establishing a meeting calendar, setting procedural rules, and planning future discussion topics. These meetings are open to the public and will be recorded for later viewing. There are 2 upcoming budget hearings in September for the fiscal year 2026 budget. The first hearing will occur on Tuesday, September 9th, and the second and final hearing will be on Tuesday, September 23rd. Both hearings will take place right here at the Bay County Government Center and will begin at 5:01 p.m. Stay connected with what's happening in Panama City. The city offers several ways to keep residents and visitors informed, including email and text notifications, a monthly newsletter, live stream meetings, YouTube access, and active social media channels. Visit the city's website to explore all these resources or subscribe today by texting Panama City to 38276 for instant updates. Mayor, Commissioners, as I mentioned, the Charter Review Committee met on July 31st, had their first meeting. Mr. Brandon Berg was elected chairman. He's here this morning to give a brief report and update to the commissioners. Mr. Berg?
Chairman Berg.
No, I appreciate it, guys. For those we haven't met, my name is Brandon Berg. I was selected as the chairman of the Charter Advisory Board, and it's a real honor to be selected for that position, be on the board in the first place. So we had our first meeting on July 31st. It was very, very productive. Mr. Zimmerman kind of gave us an overview of how the city charter is formatted, how home rule power works, how it's been sort of not necessarily specifically modified over the years, but legislatively modified over the years as things have changed and things have become obsolete. The charter has kind of hasn't been completely neglected for 50 years, but it needs an overhaul. And Jonathan was very helpful about it too. I commend you guys on the quality of the people that you've asked to serve on this board. It's great viewpoints, highly professional, highly intelligent. I think we're going to come up with a very good work product for you guys and submit it to y'all. The status quo is to basically get an inventory of the situation as best as we can. Admittedly, like none of us have studied the charter before this point. We're not all city charter scholars, so we're reading it, we're understanding it. And then step 1 is basically soliciting feedback from as many people as possible. Just trying to get an inventory of all the issues, the pros, the cons, the bottlenecks, what's working, what's not working. Then that's from all stakeholders. That's from you guys, that's from city staff, that's from citizenship. And as my experience as an attorney here in town, I do a lot of community association law. So we do a lot of rewriting of governing documents. And the first thing you do is you kind of get everything on the table. And what you'll find is a lot of the stuff will go in the charter, but some of this stuff won't. There'll be very valid concerns, but it'll be like a staff level concern or, oh, we can do that via ordinance or whatever. But until we literally just get everything out there, we can't go from there. So right now it's understand the charter, get a full picture of the status quo. I have told the review board that I'll do my best to kind of look at the way to attack reviewing the charter. There are discrete sections in there, but some of them are more interwoven with other ones. So some of them all kind of work together, mayor power, city council power, city manager power, those all kind of work together, whereas there's certain sections that are a little bit more independent. And so I'm going to help try to come up with a way with Mr. Zimmerman to the best way to address it. We're going to meet on a monthly basis. So far, the next meeting, like Jonathan said, was September 4th.
Correct.
We need input. We need input from everybody, right? But right now we don't know what we don't know. So citizens are encouraged and needed to attend to those meetings. We're going to have a policy on how to what citizen input's going to look like. But right now, it's just getting input, figuring out what we need to do from here, and then we will provide inputs to you guys, or what's the word I'm looking for? Updates to you guys, either as requested, or if you don't mind, I can push updates to you guys. If we say, hey, we had a really important meeting and want to update you guys at your next commission meeting, we'd like the opportunity to do that. But overall, things are going very well. Honored to be here. And then if you need anything else, let me know.
Thank you.
I'll just add that additionally for the public, the other members are Brandon Henderson Jensenius, who is the vice chair, Ms. Cecile Schoon, Mr. J.P. Ferreira, and Mr. Ron Danzy. So,
Mr. Dancy, here too. Any questions or anything?
Good. Yeah, thank you for your service.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir. 6A.
yep. Item 6A is the final reading of Ordinance 3275, the speed detection systems in school zones. Mayor and Commissioners, attached for your consideration is the final reading for Ordinance 3275, speed detection systems in school zones. Speed violations in school zones jeopardize the public safety, specifically children who are arriving and/or departing from school. Enforcement of speed limits in school zones with police officers alone can be difficult, such as there may not be enough police officers to stop and cite motorists who are speeding, or while one motorist is stopped and being cited, other speeding motorists are not being stopped. To assist municipalities with the rising concern of speeding in school zones, House Bill 657 was signed into law and codified as Chapter 2023-174, Laws of the State of Florida during the 2023 Florida legislative session. House Bill 657 authorizes the use of speed detection systems to enforce school zone speed limits for violations in excess of 10 miles per hour over the applicable speed limit when children are going to or from and during the entirety of the school day. Additional information after conversations with each of you over the last number of weeks, any of the fines collected in this must be used to administer speed detection systems in school zones and other public safety related initiatives such as enhanced crosswalks with both flashers and markings, adding sidewalks, etc. It's also important to note that any ticket that is issued is not automatically sent to the violator. Sworn LEO of the City of Panama City will have to review that and check all the boxes before it is sent, and no points are assessed. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, staff recommends approval, and this ordinance is before you for your consideration.
Thank you. Just how many people are here to speak on this particular item? Anyone? Just one? Okay. Do I have a motion to discuss?
Well, you're required to, it's a
Oh, I was going to
requirement.
roll it into, okay, so just open discussion. All right, if you're here to talk about it, come on, Mr. Dancy. My bad.
No.
Ron Danzy, 2910 Kings Harbor Road, Panama City, Florida. A couple, 3 weeks ago, I stood here encouraging you to pass this, and I'm doing the same thing today. As a reminder, I looked at some of the numbers. Palm Bay Education, who's right across the street, we have the most violators come through our speed zone between 11th Street and Balboa, a little over 1,000. So safety first is why I'm here. We need to make sure that we do that. And by the way, there's no flashing signs on any of that now. This company coming will put them up, and it will help us very good. Next thing, just as a commissioner, I doubt there's many things that come before you that are budget neutral or very close to that. This is one of those things that is on the expense side, so just keep that in mind. I don't believe it's going to cost you much money. One other point on the operational side, I read some of the documents, and it led me to believe that there would be some cost sharing, and it said with the district, just make sure that charter is in that, because I'm the only charter school in the 11 school zones, and just please do me a favor and make sure that's in the fine details. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on item 6A? All right, seeing none. Closing public comments. Do I have a motion? No motion to discuss or accept. So that motion dies. Is that correct? But that
Yeah,
item dies?
if no motion, it
If there's no motion, it
dies.
dies?
Well, yes.
I'll motion to discuss.
All right, I have a first, I have
Let's do
a
it.
motion to discuss. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, let's discuss. Mr. Street.
So I'd asked the staff to look at one particular issue, is because these all don't get installed at one time, there's a possibility that someone the speed zones may not be active in the 30-day warning period. Did we find a resolution for that?
Yes, staff believes when we negotiate with the third party that would administer this, that they could make that happen. So if we do all the installations and then the 30-day warning period would happen concurrently with all of the school zones at the same time.
So ensuring that the school zones would be active, so everybody gets a 30-day warning period.
Yeah, it would not be a rolling 30-day per school zone. It would be the 30-day window for the entire city versus school zone by school zone. That would make it much cleaner for us.
Okay.
Can we get like a minute from staff on existing camera systems in Bay County that potential people coming through Panama City, living in Panama City experience, whether they know it or not?
Repeat the first.
Can I get like a 1 minute overview from staff on the public record of all the different camera types that are already out there being used by both us and the county or anyone?
Would you like me to do that right now?
Yes, please. Yeah, just quickly.
Yeah, so between existing LPRs throughout Bay County and the city.
Acronym, sir. LPR?
I'm sorry?
Acronym?
Yeah, license plate readers. So those are cameras specifically that look at license plates and feed that data back into our real-time crime center. We share that component with Bay County and several other agencies throughout this county. We have access to hundreds of them locally and thousands of them nationally once you're plugged into the vendor's network. In addition to the LPRs that kind of let us know who's coming and going, that shows active warrants, it shows, it can help with silver and amber alert issues that we can actually red flag those silver and amber alerts. We can red flag people with violent crimes and histories if we can tie a license plate number to that individual. And that helps us know the bad actors coming and going in our city. The goal when we started this was really to help with some of the spring break and criminal issues we saw around that, and that it grew because the tool's been very useful. And I'll give you one example really quick. We had an abduction, somebody in a white van with a Texas license plate. We had 3 letters. And somebody saw that van snatch a lady off the street. We had them pulled over and arrested, and that lady freed within 12 minutes. That's something otherwise, without this tool, we would not have been able to do as quickly. So hundreds of those throughout the city and the county. We also have access to the Bay County's Advanced Traffic Control Center upstairs, all their traffic cameras. Those aren't license plate readers, but they do help with just that virtual intelligence piece. So there is a heavy component that all modern law enforcement agencies are using now, and it's considered a force multiplier. This is industry standard on how modern law enforcement agencies operate and work and how they intelligence gather. Frank McKeithen, when he got to preview this, he said it was cheating. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of the capability of Throbbrush.
And then Fusus.
Yeah. So Fusus is the software that ties all that together. So schools, if they put interior cameras in and we have a blueprint, we can actually overlay the blueprint with those cameras. And if a school has an issue, our officers can actually view that camera in that corridor of the school and know what they're walking into and know before they get there if they need more help to get them on the way. Private businesses can engage in that as well. We've got several grocery stores that really like that idea. And we had a former grant program with the CRA where we did that. This allows officers to, because these businesses and schools and whatnot are already participating voluntarily in the program, it prevents officers from having to interrupt their investigation, because these businesses have willfully submitted the ability for us to view these cameras. They can go immediately to Fusus and view what they need to view and then pop out. So there's a camera component to this that's voluntary with the community as well. And that prevents, that takes a step out of the warrant process for camera footage because they're willfully volunteering it. Fusus also ties together all the camera footage, all the LPRs, and it's really the kind of the software that does it all for us.
Can I ask Barry, just how many LPRs, license plate readers, are already deployed in Bay County?
Close to 200. I'd have to.
200 already exist.
In Panama City or Bay County?
I think it's close to 200 in Bay County, but I could follow up in an email with
How many are deployed in the city currently?
I want to say 110, but I'm getting outside.
So we're about half that number currently.
50.
We got 50.
Deputy Chief saying 50.
50. So we have,
Good.
so we have 50, we have 50 license, 80.
80.
Do I hear 90? Do I hear?
Okay, 80 in the city and 100 throughout the county.
So I guess this is one of the things that I've learned over the last year is license plate readers are already happening across the state. When we go through, if you drive to Disney, it's happening on I-75, Turnpike. This is the mechanism that's being used to specifically charge drivers for either tolls, tickets, or, overall safety measure and tracking hit and runs, abductions, like you said. And so, regardless of where this ordinance lands today, license plate readers have been in the city and Bay County for quite some time. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the monies received from the tickets. $60 of it comes to the city of Panama City, with the others being divvied up between the state and the city, the school district.
I got the check.
So that $60 of every ticket that comes to us, what will we do with that?
So that's what I referred to. We're limited. It must be used to administer speed detection systems in school zones and other public safety initiatives. So our focus would be enhanced crosswalks, flashers and markings to further enhance those crosswalks in and around school, adding of sidewalks and curbs to create a safer walking environment. Those are the type of public safety initiatives that we would use. $60 the city retains, $12 goes to Bay District schools. You each have this handout. $5 for school crossing guards, $3 for the criminal justice STC training fund, and then $20 to the Department of Revenue General Fund. So that's the breakdown of the $100.
So if I
And
may-
again, that's only for 11 miles per hour or over the posted speed limit.
But the flashing signs and all of that doesn't come out of the $60, right? That is what we pay for.
It does come out.
It
Oh,
would
it
come out of
does?
that, yes, sir.
Okay.
We roughly net $40 per ticket.
Okay.
In that.
Okay.
And then that could go to, that is specifically for the use of public safety, so it could go fund fire, police, or EMS.
So how do you plan to use it?
It'd be additional investments in LPRs, it'd be additional investments in operating capital. We weren't able to replace 15 police vehicles in next year's proposed budget, so it'd go to fill some of those gaps initially, and then it could go for enhancements to the FUSA system, a variety of ways. And we can get a plan drafted together for what that would look like before we award a contract to a vendor.
Yeah, and it's important to note that the actual vendor we choose, that will come back at one of the next two commission meetings for your consideration.
Yeah,
That's not being decided today.
I was going to point out that the study started a year ago, so the commission before us voted to study it. A lot of the confusion is that Red Speed, which is a company logo, is on a lot of the materials, but they did the study, so there's a little bit of confusion on, today we're not approving cameras and vendors, or the minutia of how we spend it, or what the price of a ticket is, and is there we basically already have tag reading cameras in school zones, correct?
Very few of them. So
But there are.
Yeah.
Right. We're literally discussing, do we want to then add more of those same exact cameras and start issuing tickets from the data we see? That's what we're really discussing today. Later, and I would say if we did proceed with this, we could then have a whole workshop on the minutia of how we roll it out and the pricing and where does the money go and all those things. We're merely discussing how do we feel as a governing body to allow more of these cameras in school zones under the umbrella of public safety and increasing public safety. Do we want to start having tickets issued from the data we collect? That's what I think we're here to discuss.
Yeah, the ordinance as proposed enables staff to go do this. It has to be on the books before we could contract with a vendor like Red Speed. I will add that as a component of this, this is an LPR and camera-based system. Its primary purpose is to find drivers that are breaking the speed limit laws, but it also does function just like any other LPR. We get the same data and intelligence off of it as well. So it would just enhance that capability.
Yeah. I had like 100 comments on my Facebook post a couple weeks ago on this topic. I sent 160 emails yesterday and had probably 90 come back. And most of the apprehension that I saw was under and me as well, not realizing the cameras already exist and they're already there. And the state created this bill literally to open the door for this specific use. Right, they didn't, and I would have assumed that the state would have been tightening all these things down, but they literally opened the door to have these discussions, is what they've done.
So
not that I'm,
One thing I've learned is the state really is in our life more than.
Yes.
That's one thing.
So I'd get apprehension back, and people would say, I don't want any cameras in there. I'd say, there's actually cameras already in school zones.
Yeah, and I would say I did send a program to the staff that basically uses the existing LPR system. The only thing that is regulated from the state is tickets can't be issued. One, they have to be issued with a licensed officer actually reviewing it. So you always have the chance of facing your accuser in exactly how this goes. The second thing was you can do speed detection outside of school zones, but you cannot issue anything more than a warning. There can be no ticket involved. If there was a way to do this without doing tickets and we could actually afford to do it, that would be amazing. But these are very expensive processes. So.
Yeah, the other pushback I got was just put cop cars out there, and whether there's a person in it or not, and those don't really work for more than a few hours. Well, the unmanned cop cars.
Yeah, if I could address that, I noticed, the east side of Hathaway Bridge is a big speeding problem for us. And that I had the bright idea a few years ago to do the same thing, and there was maybe 2 days before for sale sign was underneath the windshield wiper. So,
Right.
they very temporary in nature unless there's somebody working speed. So.
All right.
My concern was all day. Kids are in school after drop off and before, but I was reminded that the speed limit, particularly like on Harrison Avenue and 11th Street, the speed limit goes back up. It goes down during school drop off and then goes back up. So that 10 miles an hour starts at 35 instead of 25. So it does not, catches the speeder if it needs it, but it's not hurting us all day long at 25 miles an hour. That was my first concern.
Well, so this is proposed for 30 minutes before school drop off through the school day to 30 minutes after the pickup, because there's students are still coming and going from campus during the day. Either it's parents picking them up or them leaving or whatnot. So there's still active traffic in those areas. And the school zones, I believe, are enforced throughout the day.
But to Robbie's point, the speed limit doesn't stay consistent throughout the day.
Right, it doesn't stay reduced.
So it would be
throughout the school day.
46. If you're going 46 down Harrison, you would have
Yeah.
gotten a ticket. If you were going 35, you would not, or you were going 44 for that
Yeah,
matter.
Red Speed moves with those targets.
Speed limit's 30.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, another caveat, which staff completely supports, is setting a sunset provision. I think the point was made, this is, zero cost to the city. And so, would support, like a 3-year sunset provision. If there's no positive action by the commission, this ordinance automatically sunsets, I would say August 31st of 2028.
How many cameras is this?
I don't know. I can find out.
I just want, we have 80. 18. So we'd be moving from 80 cameras to 98
Correct.
in the city. Okay, thank you.
So one of the potentials that would exist if we pass this is that when we talk with the contractor who's willing to come in and install their own cameras, install their own equipment, and run their own software, is there is potential for pressure to increase the time period, because they get a cut of every ticket. So that was some of the things that I was running into the last time this came around, was that target kept moving. When I would talk to the contractor, the target would move.
You mean like earlier in the day and longer in the day?
Or all day.
Or all day.
Or
24/7.
Maybe it's not 30 minutes anymore. Maybe we're asking for an hour before and after. You know, there is potential for that to be pushed. Obviously, we would have to approve it if this got passed. We would have to approve it. But my point is that there's potential there for well, you know, running our numbers. We don't think that this is going to you know, this is going to pay off our investment here. We're going to need to extend the hours, and so then we're going to be under pressure by the contractor to extend those hours or be subject to whatever the contract says.
Well, that would be a deal breaker for me. So, I mean, so if we approve the ordinance and then somebody comes back with extended hours past that point in time, it's going to be a different vendor, or it's going to be just dead in the water for me.
Well, yeah, they're not going to do that on the front end, though.
Who owns the infrastructure once it's in?
Well, to address that concern real quick, staff would not bring a contract back. That wasn't what we presented. So if the vendor, and they know this, if they were to bring that back, we would choose a different vendor.
They're not going to do that
But I
on the
don't
front
want
end, is
there
my
should be a
point.
caveat in there is what he's saying.
We will
Yeah,
renegotiate
it's-
a new contract with them otherwise. So state statute dictates the times and lengths of when they can do this, and we follow state statute as baked in today. I would not support bringing back additional hours over what was presented today.
Each one of these cameras costs about $2,500, and that's not installed. That's just the camera itself, $2,500. We've heard that there's going to be 18. There's potential for growth there as well. I actually love these cameras. I think they're amazing. I just don't like the use of, or the program in which we are looking to implement them. I think that we need more of these cameras in the neighborhoods to show, to provide information to our law enforcement, so that our law enforcement can action on actual data. But I do believe that regardless, I mean, I believe staff is competent. I believe that they're not going to try to trick us or anything like that. I don't think there's anything malicious going on there. But I do believe that every contract that we are going to look at moving forward is going to include some kind of provision to pay for the equipment that's going to go in. And if this is too successful, then they're going to want to increase something, or we're going to be on the hook for it. I mean, why in the world would any company not write that into their contract to protect the investment in which they're installing? So again, I don't think that they would bring it on the front end. I think that it would be a negotiation piece on the back end, where after the contract is signed and after the equipment is in, and then all of a sudden it's going to be, well, we're not getting the revenue we thought we were going to get. We're going to need to change this, or you're just going to owe us all the thousands of dollars that
That would be in the contract that. you would have to pay
Absolutely.
them,
But my point is, you're not going to get a contract that's not going to have that in it. That's my point.
Yeah. Can I touch on 2 points? Can you clarify when you say you would like the cameras in the neighborhoods, but you don't want them in the school zones? That doesn't make sense to me.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that I didn't want them in school zones. So let me clarify.
Yes.
The statement is that I don't like the idea of them ticketing. That I don't like that process.
Interesting. So your cameras are okay, but
To get data, yes.
Interesting.
Because it's not the camera that I have an issue with. It's more of the what. And I realize that there is a process here that an officer is going to look at it. But on the receiving end, when you're looking at user experience, it's going to feel like an automated ticket. Right? When you get it in the mail, it's going to say, you did this much in this school zone. Here's your picture, and officer so and so approved this, and it's going to feel very automated. And so I think that the automation piece of that, especially when many of them get kicked out, in an area where people believe in personal freedom, it's going to cause a lot of backlash. And I know it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, I wouldn't be upset if I got a ticket. Well, you would if you didn't believe you deserved that ticket. And so you get into that, there is some recourse here, but as you well know, being up here, it's very difficult sometimes to educate the public. And so now all of a sudden you have this increase in public distrust. On top of that, I have driven through many school zones where it's a Monday and it's a holiday, or it's a Friday and it's a holiday, and the lights are flashing. I mean, do you get a ticket then? Do you not? What do you do if you get one?
Yeah.
So my point there is that when you combine those two things together, and you look at the goal is a noble goal, but the means by which we're going to achieve the goal, I just don't agree with. And again, machines can break. There can be some misconfigurations. The officer may not know that when they sign off on the ticket, and now all of a sudden you have somebody who is going the speed limit or under the speed limit who got a ticket. And so again, further dividing that mistrust. So my solution, again, I'm not going to bring a complaint without a solution, right? But my solution is that that we look at these devices. They're $2,500 a piece. We could purchase them, or at least do a test in certain neighborhoods. I know every one of y'all have in your neighborhoods. You have areas that are cut throughs, and those are the biggest complaint areas that I get. Where somebody's trying to avoid 23rd Street, or trying to avoid 390, or they're trying to avoid something. And so they're just going to drive through a neighborhood that's just a connector road, and they drive through too fast. Well, that happens, generally speaking, that happens during certain times of day. And this type of technology can be placed temporarily or semi-permanently to give data to the police department. They have an intelligence division that can parse through that data. Look at a week's worth and go, hey, on Mondays at 7 a.m., we have 5 people who fly through this area. Let's send a police car over there. And then it is, yes, send a police car, but it's much more resource mindful, because you can't put a police car at every school zone. That's just we just don't have the money for that. But we can do targeted with data backing this up. We can do targeted enforcement.
So the $2,500 comment, because if this is a $2,500 solution that fixes the issue, I wouldn't be considering this at all. But what is the actual cost of devices? And is that monthly? Is that yearly? What does that look like?
So the 2,500, I think it's closer to 3,500, but.
Is that a month? Is that at one?
That's annually per camera. We don't own the camera. That camera's leased. But when we start talking the number of 18 cameras, that adds up pretty quick. And LPRs aren't the issue. It's the speed detection cameras, and I don't know how much, but it's the software that stands behind it that's issuing these tickets. So the question's been asked on the one-on-ones is, can't we just buy this stuff and administer it ourselves to do this? There are other companies out there that do something similar. Commissioner Street, you sent me one. It was Traffic Logics, and they're the one that's legal in all 50 states. And it just sends a nasty gram in the mail. Hey, you were doing this, stop, that kind of thing. Part of our, that $40 per ticket that we were looking at was to enhance capabilities elsewhere. So we could do that data gathering and that informal warning through the mail in those other areas. I think we're paying in excess of $80,000 to $90,000 a year right now in our existing LPR infrastructure on what our lease is. So it's just, we don't have the funds budgeted we're really tight next year for the police department.
It sounds like a lot of the questions today are more centered around contractual executionary than it is actual thing. And so I think to the mayor's point, what we're making a decision today is, do we want to be able to have a ticketing process utilizing the cameras?
And do we want to privatize that?
Yeah.
That's basically what this is. And I think that's where the uncomfortability shows up. If this was emptying trash cans in parks, it'd be like, yo, privatize it, or painting fences, no big deal. But this is much more personable because it's law enforcement.
Could you guys give us a proposal that was also us doing it ourselves?
Yeah.
With alongside the contract that would be considered? With the same ordinance? Is that possible?
Honestly, I don't think I could. And the reason why is I don't have the ability to create the software. I know the mayor of Granger may, and I'm talking about the automated Mailing this stuff out,
Yeah.
that piece of it, like, I just don't know how staff would execute it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm not wanting. I don't want the automated mailing out. I don't want all of that. I want to collect data and then have the police department go have a face-to-face conversation with why somebody's driving 88 miles an hour down a residential road. That's what I would rather have, because that person's probably not doing something else right as well. But yeah, I have an email here from Radar Sign, and again, I can't send this to y'all, right? But I can talk to you about it right now. This is it's one of those 11-inch LED display kind of things that has a radar in it. It has battery pack. It's got a solar panel on it. You can do the red and blue strobe alerts. This comes with two, and it comes with it comes with a 2-year warranty. Shipping is $180. In total, it's $5,180. It comes with two. So it's the same technology without the back end that has all the automated.
Right. And we're
It's-
currently
yeah.
deploying like radar activated, this is your speed signs, and they're permanent signs with the battery pack solar power. They don't collect data, but they do serve a purpose. They help slow some traffic down in certain areas.
This one does. This one collects data, and it sends it Street Smart data collection, lifetime license per sign. 35 different charts, graphs, tables included, provides weekly, daily, hourly, and half-hour data on number of vehicles, number of speeders, average speeds, peak speeds, 50th and 85th percentile, and more.
Is there an LPR?
No extra charge.
Again,
Radar sign.
Is it LPR or no?
I don't believe it's LPR. It's just going to be your, I don't know.
How would they have a conversation if they don't know who the person is?
No. You don't need the LPR necessarily. And we could probably even talk to them and just say, hey, how much would LPR be tacked onto this? Because this is two for $5,100 or $5,200 rounding up. But if this didn't have the LPR, then all it does is it tells you, hey, at this time of day, this time range, you're seeing a lot of speeding going through here.
So we have that data right now that shows 11 different school districts that have that exact data point. So now what do we do?
Well,
You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, well, the
like at some
difference is-
point in time, you got to have an action
I
step.
mean, I drove on the way here through Jinx and I was like, oh man, how ironic would it be if I got a speeding ticket on the way to talk about this?
Yeah.
Because there's we haven't done a great job, in my opinion, of making school zones and times obnoxiously clear to a driver. Like there's nothing that flashes. There's no, you're going 45. And so we're now kind of in this place where we have principals who are like, yeah, we could really use these safer school zones. We're like, well, we really haven't done a really good job at it. And now we're kind of going, and none of us feel great about, we haven't exhausted all resources to get to this point is one of my concerns. Is like, it doesn't feel like we've done all those steps to go, gosh, we've just tried everything. This is the next step.
So let's be clear. I think one of the reasons we're entertaining it has to do with the potential for the monies that it would bring in. And that's why we're entertaining it. The safety of the school zones is a concern. But now we're beginning to talk about safety first, but what's that cost? And we just had a budget hearing here, and we know we can't afford it. We know we can't afford the increased manpower. We have asked all staffs, all departments to cut. And we just sat here in the same space a little while ago. So the question is, do we want to implement this particular method to bring in the revenue that we've been told by staff is going to supplant the police department budget? I think that's the real question before us, in addition to the school safety.
I agree, Janice. I think at the end of the day, like we're talking about, do people want to pay more taxes to implement these tools? Or should it be the offenders that are funding these tools to go in place?
Well, user fee.
So, yeah, you are welcome. You are welcome to speed in the city of Panama City, but you're going to obviously pay.
Abuser fee.
Yeah.
So like that.
It won't increase your insurance costs or put points on your license. You
Yeah.
should look at it that way.
And you know, regardless whether it's $10,000 here, $15,000 here, when you talk about, 18 different schools that exist in the city of Panama City, it adds up very quickly. And that's not even counting the residential streets that I know are issues that I have citizens that call me consistently on. There's no amount of law enforcement that is going to solve this issue.
So another problem, and I'm glad you brought that up, there's a lot of schools in Bay County, and a lot of those schools are in Panama City, but not all of those schools will benefit from this.
And my challenge with that is these other LPR cameras that are available to us, like your example there, this funding could be dedicated to helping even those. That's the piece. At the end of the day, unless we're going to go through a budgetary is it okay to walk through a year? We know beyond a shadow of a doubt we have an issue. Is it okay to go through a year of inaction on addressing that issue?
So,
While we try to find budget money that we already know is so tight.
so are these contracts, do we know, are they set up where there's going to be a period where if we cancel, we're going to have to buy this infrastructure?
I think there'd be like a restock fee. I mean, we'll get to that during contract negotiation, but like, let's say we cancel within the first 6 months, there'd be a financial penalty, I'd imagine. The vendor's going to want to secure their investment. And that's why we've worked with them to figure out what would be a good sunset date. Like they're recouped and they've made what they think they need to make and they can walk away. But yeah, all the LPRs, all the enhanced signage, we're even asking for additional signage on top of what's required, especially with school zones that have stoplights in them. So think Harrison Avenue on at Bay High. So all of those things would be subject to that. If we do terminate, and we don't renew the contract after that 3-year initial sunset, I'm asking them to write in like, what would it cost to purchase all the stuff? And you guys still take your LPR cameras and head home, but we'd like to keep the enhanced signage at a minimum, because that would be their investment.
Okay, so-
work through all that.
So what started out as this isn't going to cost us any money.
Yep.
And they're coming to us and it doesn't work well, now it's our problem.
Well, if the revenues don't.
Hold on, it's our problem,
Yes.
and financially, and that's not the way that it was presented. And they're coming to us. If they want to take the risk of coming to us and not getting their money back, I'm cool with that. That contract needs to say that. But if it's not working out, why are we going to pay them to go away? We have this is a cycle I'm noticing in our contracts we've got to get away from. It shouldn't cost us money to separate and they came to us.
Yeah, there'll be, so we can work out those terms of sort of separation and what that looks like, but.
That's called zero. But my point is if we're gonna have this consideration up here and know that contract is gonna be that way, if all of them are that way, that's not good for the city.
Just because it's all that way doesn't mean that that's what it has to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
If I could clarify a few things. So, thank you, Mr. Jones, you're doing a great job. So if we allow them to do this for 3 years, there's not going to be a cost. Okay, so they're not going to come in 6 months and demand that we extend the hours because, again, state statute limits it to 30 minutes before school to 30 minutes after. Unless the state statute changes, they can ask us all day long. There's zero flexibility there. I know one comment I think, Mr. Mayor, you made, and I was thinking just philosophically, I have read studies that I kind of agree with you in the sense that I need, just me personally, like, I think people are less likely to be comfortable with cameras in their neighborhoods because that's just more private area, but there's no expectation that there's not cameras in large gathering areas like schools, downtown events, large public arenas, stuff like that. I mean, I think people expect there to be cameras in that. So I think there's probably more receptiveness to, again, school zones, downtown corridors, which is where we primarily, high traffic areas, you kind of expect that to some degree. So, and again, I think the thing is that if we, as long as we allow this particular vendor, again, we haven't settled on this one. It's the one that's potentially been recommended. But if after 3 years, there's no expense. And we're not looking at implementing this until the first school day in January. just to make sure, I think to answer Commissioner Street's point, to give time to get them all set up, time of warning and everything. So we're looking at implementing this the first school day in January.
So I would say you guys need to bring us, based upon this conversation, you guys would need to bring us a contract that's monthly, yearly, and potentially the 3-year, and what the cost difference would be between that.
I'd just like to see a copy of the contract that they're going to ask us to look at.
Yeah, I think
Up front.
what you can distill this down to is lots of apprehension about the next step and the details of the contract. Every idea is a good idea and a bad idea at the exact same time. It's all in how it's implemented and the details. And so I think we're again sort of going into like, we got big concerns. That's the biggest thing. This body has lots of concerns about the next step. And it feels like between the state stuff and then the study and this, it feels like we're rolling towards a destination that we're mentioning what the potentially when the cameras roll out, and we don't really have any details. So it feels, as someone who's up here, that we're being drugged to a deadline and we don't know the details, and we're going to be kind of pressured into a detail that we don't really like. So I would say if we move forward with this ordinance change, which starts the conversation with Red Speed on those details, we want lots of time to discuss it in a virtual workshop just for this. So all those discussions happen. So none of us get up here in 30 days and go, I didn't get to shape this thing, and I'm answering for it, right? That's what I feel, and I think that's what this heightened tone that we have is this concern of the next step. And so slow the process down. I mean, government moves slow, but slow this detail portion down for us so that we have time to reach out to people if we proceed with this ordinance. That's what I'm hearing.
And how is it that we're able to move forward with Red Speed in mind? Do we need to send it out to RFP?
I was just going to, Mr. Zimmer and I just were commenting on that. I mean, if that's something the body would do, we could send out an RFP with specific restrictions in the desired contract. And absolutely that process, that'll take a little bit longer, but that's fine. We could craft the RFP and send it out to be on the street for 30 days and give people plenty of opportunities to respond based on our stipulations.
I like that idea.
So.
Could I make just a suggestion as well? If Red Speed doesn't come back to the table with what the conditions and restrictions that we've asked, is that something? Not playing favorites with a vendor, but this vendor is kind of known to be the best in the state and kind of started a lot of this. And Greg Parks with that company has really been over backwards for us for the last year and a half. So just, if
they can meet all the conditions that this commission sets, then great. I don't have an issue
We
with
can have that conversation of what's non-negotiable from his standpoint, and if that is a hindrance to this body, we can move on.
When I was doing research on YouTube of just what are news stories relate to Red Speed, and it's really nothing to do with them in particular. It's when citizens are surprised that there is a ticket zone, that there hasn't been enough public awareness, and that the ticketing is not tied to the flashing sign. Like, we only issue tickets if there's flashing signs so that Some cities do 60-day warning. Some cities do the first ticket's $5, the next scales up for the repeat offenders. But those details, in my opinion, are all worked out and potentially the next step.
Yeah.
So
I think one other thought too, Mr. Mayor, and just listen to y'all deliberate. I mean, I understand, a desire for warnings, and I think, we support there being a process. I think that's a good practice. But, even those flashing signs that tell you you're going 55 and a 45, I mean, eventually people start tuning those out. The truth is, with any type of human behavior, if there's not a punitive attachment to it, if I know that all I'm going to do is get warnings every time I speed or not wear my seatbelt, then I might not do that. So there does, I think, if you do want to change certain types of behavior, there does need to be some type of punitive punishment at the end of that process.
I think a great example is these signs that you're speaking of. There's a radar sign on Beach Drive, and in the time that radar sign's been there, we've had 47 accidents, 13 related pedestrians. So, I mean, the idea that a sign's just going to fix something, I mean, if that was the case.
How does that compare
Eventually,
to?
people start
presented
tuning
that
it out. Yeah.
How does that?
Presented the idea that a sign would fix everything.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, we can sign everything to end, but if there's no enforcement.
What I was
there will never be
suggesting
a-
is that we don't just put a sign out, but that we collect the data and then put a police officer there during specific times. That those two things are coupled together. It's not just a sign. That's.
And the data you just gave us about the Beach Drive, do we have the data comparative prior to?
I don't think that one collects data.
Well, will we know how many tickets and?
Yeah, we would know how many
accidents and all that?
crashes, ma'am. I could give the police leadership team a date, and they can pull up the reports in that particular stretch of road.
But I think the point of you bringing it up was to say they don't make a difference, and I'm just asking for the comparative data to draw that conclusion.
Yeah, they may have some type of difference with it, but I mean, as far as fixing an issue of something, it doesn't fix anything, not comparatively to an actual enforcement process.
Oh, well, no, one last thing. Talking about fixing and comparative data, Red Speed's the vendor for Alpharetta, Georgia, and they have 7 school zones around 6 schools. And they've been with Red Speed since December of 2021, and they've seen over their 3-year, or their program since 2021, a 97% reduction in speed violations. So this vendor is in a goal to work his revenue numbers down. You'll see revenue at year 1 at its highest, and then like Alpharetta, we expect to see a drop in that. So just for instance, their 2025 violations were 27% lower to their prior year and 42% lower than the year prior to that. So there is a marked reduction in revenue and tickets that go out for a period of time.
Yeah, and just one other point, again, with a uniform traffic citation, which will be issued by an officer, 1 to 9 miles per hour, this means you're pulled over and you're given a ticket. The estimated fine is $155. There would be points. And then if you're 10 to 14 miles over, then the estimated total fine is $305.
So the ordinance before us is just a, yes, we want to pursue this system, or no? Is that correct? We are not choosing a company?
That's correct.
To my careful reading, I do not see Red Speed in this ordinance.
That's correct.
We could accept the ordinance with specific direction to staff about implementation, and it comes back before this body. Is that what is in front of us?
It has to come back regardless. The contract would have to come back with y'all regardless.
Well, we just want y'all to know, we know.
Well,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
it
I know you
just
know.
never sign an agreement, and then we never proceed. So we have the ordinance, but never choose a company, and it never moves
That
forward.
is correct, sir.
So we don't like the contract, we don't have to move forward.
Right.
So we want to have the conversation about the contract.
Under those premise, I'll motion to approve
Second.
Don't we have a motion on the floor?
Yes,
for discussion.
exactly the same.
All right, motion and a second, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
No.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Right.
I would like to read the title, and before I read the title, I did want to point out that there was a little cleanup in section 22-502 designation local hearing officers. Just makes it clear that the hearing officers are the code enforcement special magistrates, and just made that item clear. The title is ordinance number 3275, an ordinance of the City of Panama City, Florida, amending Chapter 22, Traffic and Vehicles, adding Article 8, Speed Detection Systems in School Zones, adopting findings, providing for use of automated speed detection systems in accordance with state law, providing for a local hearing officer, providing for a traffic infraction enforcement officer, repealing all inconsistent ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we now move into quasi-judicial hearings. During quasi-judicial proceedings, the Commission will hear evidence and render a decision regarding the matter presented based upon the evidence received. The parties before the Commission and the public are entitled to present evidence, documents, witnesses, etc., and cross-examine witnesses. All parties and witnesses will be under oath and the entire proceedings recorded. The Commission is not bound by the strict rules of evidence and may consider any evidence which it deems relevant and trustworthy. Any member of the Commission may ask questions of the parties or of the witnesses. Since quasi-judicial proceedings are legal in nature, everyone is expected to adhere to proper courtroom decorum and etiquette. Any comments or objections should be directed to the mayor. The burden of proof in a quasi-judicial proceeding rests with the applicant. Therefore, the applicant has the opportunity to address the commission last, after all public participation and before the commission deliberates.
At this time, I will swear staff as it regards the items that are noted as quasi-judicial, and also I'll swear in additional parties that intend to testify during the public hearing. So with those that intend to testify and staff, please stand. Do you raise your right hand? Please do that. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. I'll ask the commission, before you vote, to disclose any ex parte communication, which is communication that you received outside of this public hearing, and it's information that wasn't repeated during the public hearing, and it's information which you intend to rely on in your vote. When you disclose that, you do not need to disclose the content of the communication, but just where it came from, and that would be prior to the vote. Thank you.
All right, item 7A is the first of two public hearings on ordinance 3276, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city to reflect a zoning designation of Neighborhood General NG for a property located at 1410 Wilmont Avenue with parcel ID 29666-000-000. As background information, the applicant has requested a zoning change to Neighborhood General, or NG. Staff recommends the City Commission approve the request. This item was previously reviewed by the Planning Board on July 14th of 2025, and the Planning Board recommended approval unanimously. Following documents are enclosed: Ordinance 3276, the staff analysis, report, and recommendation, and the adopted map series. Staff recommendation through the Director of Development Services that the City Commission conduct the first public hearing. Mr. Bear?
Yes, if you have any comments related to 7A, please come forward. Yes, sir. Please name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Tony Medrano, 1026 Pearson Drive. I'm the actual owner of the property. Hoping that you guys can help me out to rezone it. It's entering the neighborhood and it just doesn't look appealing, and I'm hoping that I can do a long-term, either fourplex, fiveplex, something that can look a lot better than that old church that is there. If you have any questions, let me know.
Well, first, thank you for investing in Panama City.
Oh, I'm looking forward.
Awesome. Yeah, I like, this is missing middle housing. It's sort of the in-between apartment complex with single family. So I like these.
Why Neighborhood General?
Because when is now, there's a big building, a church building, and I can only do it a duplex through the zoning that is there now. So it has to be general in order for me to do more than 2 into that unit.
That's it. Any other questions? That's all I
So
have.
we've received communication with a couple of questions on it. Builder stated he plans to build 4 units by remodeling. Plan shows 6 units, which is correct, 4 or 6.
So when I went to the meeting previous, they start using the 4, but I never thought of 4. It was already planted to be 6, but it's whatever you guys want. I mean, I just duplex wouldn't be something that will work out with the big building that it is. So before, what they were saying, and the reason I said 6 is because I need to provide 2 parking spaces per unit, and I'm only able to fit 12 parking spaces in the back. So that's why I was going with 6, but it really doesn't matter.
So I think this neighborhood concern is just how many apartments or townhomes will be there and the density in the neighborhood. Would you speak to that?
So before it was a church, I'm not sure how they park, but the concern that they have with the neighbors was that there was going to be cars in the street, and there wouldn't be no cars in the street. In the back of the property is big enough to put 12 parking spaces where there wouldn't be no traffic in the road. It would be in the back. Matter of fact, better than what it was before.
So we received a letter that was, and it poses a good question about why neighborhood residential for just the house versus just leaving neighborhood general, changing the church to neighborhood general and leaving the house as neighborhood.
Yeah. So at the last meeting, it was a lot of information. So when I left, I thought about it. You know what? Why didn't I just split the parcel? Well, the parking spaces are in the back of the house. So I couldn't just split. Yeah, I couldn't split the parcel and use the whole parcel as just residential or either or. because if I don't use the spaces, then I couldn't move that one to have parking spaces for the residents that I'm gonna have.
If I can ask a question, Michael. Michael, is there a solution that we could propose in that so that we could leave a neighborhood residential buffer and still allow them to develop forward?
Michael Fuller, Director of Development Services for the city. It was discussed splitting the parcel at the planning board meeting. However, just as he described, it could present an issue with trying to arrange the parking for his development. Also, I can't say for certain that he would be able to split the property unless we had a survey to review. The current structures on the property, we couldn't split the property and maybe increase a nonconformity, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If the buildings that are currently on there wouldn't be able to meet setback requirements, we couldn't then split the property and make the nonconformity even worse. So I guess I'm saying, I'm not sure splitting the parcel is an option.
Okay, if we could get kind of an answer before we get to the second reading more definitively. And then I guess my next question is, would there be any buffering required should it proceed forward in neighborhood general between the residential homes and the neighborhood general?
There is a buffer requirement between the dissimilar uses. So if there's a single family next door or to the south of it, he would have to buffer that
What
from
might that be?
multifamily.
10 feet?
Gosh, off the top of my head,
That's okay. You can
I
have
think it's
answers for
either 5 or 10 feet.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
I'd love to see, like I mentioned, there was another property that got rezoned and the light coming into people's houses when you have, a little more density showing up. And so whether it's a space buffer or a landscaping plan or downlighting, just sort of being thoughtful of the neighborhood of someone getting something in their backyard they weren't ready for.
Right. Our buffering section requires a solid like fence buffer in addition to landscaping, like a hedge or something.
Perfect.
And before you go, there's also a concern about oak trees, 2 healthy oak trees that are, I guess, on or near the property, and the concern that they be, just tell us about the oak trees and how they would affect this property.
Well, unless they're dead or dangerous trees, if for some reason the property owner wanted to remove those trees, he would have to mitigate. Essentially, he'd have to replant trees if he wanted to take those down.
To the width.
Rest,
Yes.
down
Yes,
site?
DBH.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that might mean if it's a 100-inch tree, it's going to be 100 inches of new.
Replant.
Yeah,
To replant.
That's a lot of trees.
Right.
To remove a heritage oak in the city of Panama City is not an easy process.
Right. But I don't know.
After losing $1 million in 3 hours.
He may want to answer
We're a
that.
little touchy on that.
So the reason, when the buffer, and the decision making was when I went to the city, they kind of educated me on how I would go about it. So the buffer, it's already there, but it's a small fence. We were planning on doing a longer fence for our own privacy, but for the neighborhood too. And it's, the houses in front are just newer, and I would like to match that image instead of just an old building. But we are going to have a buffer all around. And those trees, the only reason I would ever consider cutting the trees is they're asking for more parking spaces, but they said 2 parking spaces per unit is going to be fine. But the trees are, matter of fact, they're elegant. I mean, they're nice trees. So there's no planning on cutting no trees or anything like that.
Okay,
So
thank
if
you.
we could have a definitive answer to the lot split and a correct description of what the buffering looks like at the second reading, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else for 7A? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is William Wilms. I live in 1413 Wilmot, which is across the street. As he said, I do live in those homes that were built across the street, the newer homes. We lived in St. Andrews before, over by Lucille Moore Elementary. We moved over here closer into a single-family home because we wanted to be in the community. We don't feel that this should be approved because bringing apartments or duplexes or whatever he's calling it isn't the environment we wanted to bring. I have 3 children. They play on the street. We go to quorums across the street, there's already, you guys talked about the buffer. There's already encroaching businesses into that community. When is that line going to be drawn, right? That's what I ask of you today. If we give him this opportunity, the next person's going to come along and so on and so forth. And then it's no longer a residential community, right? We knew that buying it, but we didn't think already people were going to try to encroach into this, area and do something. That parcel, a lot can be done with it, right? Single family homes can be built on it. It doesn't need to be an apartment building. Apartment buildings bring a certain type of, people around, more cars, more people, more traffic, friends, family, unfortunately, crime as well, right? And I just don't want my kids around that type of, situation, right? Like that's why I moved into a home in a community, especially St. Andrews. You guys do a great job of trying to, keep that what it is. And you don't allow just businesses to come rushing in there and stuff like that. And I just hope you consider not approving this rezoning.
So just to be clear, we're not making a decision today because it's the first reading.
Okay.
And I haven't heard the gentleman talk about an apartment complex or a commercial space. I heard him talk about duplexes, which are single-family residents with an attached wall. The only difference between that and your house is you don't have an attached wall. And so I would consider looking at the comparison a little more closely because those are both residential uses that you're talking about, and he's talking about, but not an apartment complex, is what I heard. I heard duplexes, and only 6. So maximum of 6. Did I hear? I just want to make sure that we're not talking apartment complex.
No. Well, my thing is like reading how I understood the ordinance, the rezoning change was that, he can change it to whatever he wants after the fact. He mentioned in the last meeting it was going to be a 4 quadplex, and now the plans came out and it was 6. And what difference does it make after this was approved that he can change it again to whatever's in that zoning?
Because the rules of that zoning classification limit how much you can and can't do. Just like the rules of your zoning classification tell you how far you have to set back or your fence can be. So there's rules that govern that. But I think up front, what we would approve would be available only to be built. It's not an open checkbook to go do what he wants to. So I would just there's a protection there for you too.
I appreciate
it. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else on 7A? Yes, sir.
Good morning. I'm Bob Gilmore. I live at 1406 Wilmot, so I'm adjacent to the property. I live there with my wife, Arlene Zacher. The church building that we're talking about building in the footprint allows for about 2,800 square feet. That would, if we put in 4 units, that would make them about 600 or 700 square feet. And if we're talking about 6 units, now we're talking about 400 or 500 square feet. These are more the dimensions for a motel room, not an apartment, especially for a long-term apartment. I think what you're inviting in is not the kind of community that I moved into. Also, I guess, should I just stop there or should I bring up another question?
Keep going, you have 2 more minutes.
Excuse me?
You have 2 more minutes.
Okay. My other question is, so we put the parking behind that single family. What becomes of the single family then? Or is this become a functional space? Does it now become a daycare center? Or does it become a place for some small commercial enterprise? I would like to know what kind of plans are for that, or what would be possible. So what I would like to see happen would be if anything with that, with the church, existing church building, maybe allow 2 units, a duplex. And then a single family, and that should stay as a neighborhood residential, so that single family has to stay as a single family. Some point, the city has to make a buffer that is going to be aligned. We're not going back in here because my house goes up for sale. It's time to come back to the city council and say, hey, we got another property here. We can put in 6 more units. I mean, so then it just keeps on going down. And I think we got a nice neighborhood here. We like being here. We moved away from Panama City Beach because we didn't like all that congestion, and we're just inviting it back in. I just would ask you to make that line.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think, without getting too much debate, Mr. Fuller, will you make sure they have your information so you can be in contact with them to alleviate concerns, answer questions, and narrow the scope so we a little tighter. Anyone else for 7A? Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Arlene Zacher, and I live at 1406 Wilmot, next to that property. And I might be being redundant, but I just would like to ask all of you to please consider what can happen to that house if it's approved for a multifamily building where the church is. What happens to that little house there? What can happen to that is my question. Could it be another 6-family house if they went, a 6-family unit if it went up higher? I just wonder what can happen to it. Or could it be a bar?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fuller, will you make sure you have a meeting with them just to kind of go through the process of all this? Thank you. Anyone else for 7A? Seeing none, closing public comments.
First reading?
First reading.
Ordinance number 3276, first reading. An ordinance zoning a parcel of property located at 1410 Wilmot Avenue, Panama City, Florida, having approximately .424 acres, neighborhood general, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Item 7B is the first of 2 public hearings on ordinance 3277.1, an ordinance on the voluntary annexation of approximately .445 acres of property located at Highway 390, parcel ID 26718-195-000. As background information, the applicant has requested an annexation, a future land use change, and a rezoning to General Commercial 2 or GC2. Staff recommends the City Commission approve the request. This item was previously reviewed by the Planning Board on July 14th, 2025, and the Planning Board recommended approval unanimously. Relevant documents are enclosed. Staff recommendation to the Director of Development Services is that the City Commission conduct the first public hearing. Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Anyone here for 7B, please come to the podium to discuss. Anyone for 7B? All right, seeing none, closing public comments.
First reading.
Yes, sir.
First reading of ordinance 3277.1, an ordinance of the city approving the voluntary annexation of .445 acres of unincorporated property located at Highway 390 into the city as further defined hereinafter, amending the wards and boundaries of the city to include said land and providing for an effective date.
Item 7C is regarding the same piece of property, and it's the first of 2 public hearings on ordinance 3277.2, an ordinance amending the future land use map of the city to reflect the land use designation of general commercial for a property located at Highway 390, parcel ID 26718-195-000. Relevant background information is enclosed. Director of Development Services recommends the City Commission conduct the first public hearing. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, anyone here to speak about 7C, please come to the podium. 7C. All right, seeing none, closing public comments on 7C.
First reading.
Mention that I asked Nevin to look into, the county does this all as one vote. They don't separate it out. A little bit faster.
I love that.
So I just thought he's going to look into that, maybe bring that back to us so that that's one less vote we got to worry about.
There we go.
First reading, ordinance 3277.2, an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan future land use map of the city to reflect a land use designation of general commercial for a parcel of property located at Highway 390, provide Panama City, providing for a repealer, severability, and effective date.
Item 7D is regarding the same piece of property and is the first of two public hearings for ordinance 3277.3, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city to reflect a zoning designation of general commercial 2 or GC2 for a property located at Highway 390, parcel ID 26718-195-000. Relevant background information is enclosed. Staff recommendations of the Director of Development Services of the City Commission conduct the first public hearing. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, if you were here for 7D, please come forward to the podium to speak. 7D. All right, closing public comments on 7D.
First reading, ordinance number 3277.3, an ordinance zoning parcel of property located at Highway 390, Panama City, Florida, having approximately .445 acres, general commercial 2, providing for severability and effective date.
Yes, audience participation, section 8. We've had 2 successful town halls where we spend multiple hours discussing anything the citizens want to discuss. So we're now moving into public participation on agenda items only today. So if you have comments to make on anything through 9, items 9 through 13, or anything above that we previously discussed, please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, it might also be helpful if they state which item they're speaking to, just so staff can take those notes. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Derek Thomas, 1100 West 10th Street. If that's going to be your policy, I think it's disturbing that you don't have it online for anybody to hear. It's separated from that. Just like the Monday morning with the city manager, if that's not online, at least the first half hour where he explains what's going on during the month, I don't really see a point in it. The last meeting, you had public comment for the last item, and this is the information that you provided to the public for that. This is the information that they provided to the public. This is what treating somebody with respect looks like. This is not. So this information, especially the buildings on the T-Dock, that information was not provided to the public prior to the meeting, prior to the public having the opportunity to make comments. I think it's very interesting you're investing taxpayer money to put in the plumbing for the T-Dock, for the houses, the apartments, that you've already paid money to put in trees so that that could be a public area. Now you're talking about ripping that all out and using the same public funds, the same time you're doing the impact fees to the public to put in this, and then you're not even asking for rent that would pay for the $20.9 million that you're already out.
Which item is this?
Not the what?
Which item we're talking about? Is the marina on this agenda?
It was on the last agenda, but the information provided to the public was not corresponding to what you voted on then. So if you're having meetings on Saturday and last Saturday and I didn't attend and I can't find out what you talked about, then that's not the same as actually having an opportunity for the public to make a comment on that. I think that for you to take the public's ability to address an item that you're voting on that involves taxpayer money, and especially a lease that's a 106-year lease, because it doesn't set in, it doesn't start for 7 years. So the city doesn't even realize for 7 years that they're going to get $3,000. Their proposal for it, I asked them on that. They commented back that it wasn't a flat 5%, that it was 6%. In reality, if they made $3 million and it was 5%, it would be $150,000. But with this contract, it would be $103,000, so it's a third less money, which is already not producing enough through the $47,000 you paid for the people to go through and look at the numbers. You didn't ask them to go through and look at the actual numbers. So if you're going to actually produce, if you're going to develop the uplands, you should open it up to people that are able to build apartments, not just to people that are building marinas, and then take a rent that would actually pay for the expenses of it, so that this valuable asset to the city isn't just a drag that everybody who lives here has to pay taxes.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wanting to speak about the agenda items that we have on the agenda today? We have town halls once a month. They're really great for collaboration and discussion of items like this.
Yeah, and-
we spend 15, 20 minutes going back and forth with citizens, with answering all their questions. So we would encourage all of this dialogue.
And Mr. Mayor, just for the record, those meetings are absolutely recorded, streamed live, available to watch after the fact. And additionally, with my Monday mornings with the managers, the first Monday of every month, not only do we stream them live, you can also interact with me online. So I actually take questions from people online, so I'm not sure what Mr. Thomas is talking about.
And adding in the town halls, Mr. Zimmerman wore flip-flops one time.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's very casual, and there's donuts as well.
Fast golf cart.
Yes, he does. Yes, sir, Mr. Henry.
Yeah, Walter P. Henry, 614 Maple Avenue. I talk about your school zoning, lights. I think it said it was a public hearing on that part. I came in late. I don't know if the public talked about it, but though we're talking now, but I'm just saying you're skipping. You get the public to say anything, you make your vote. I think the public should be able to say something before y'all make y'all votes. We know you're going to do what you want to do, but you need to give them a chance. Y'all have a problem. One problem I know is Jenks Avenue. Right after you pass Florida, there's a sign say in school zone. There's another school above it. I know it's not a city school, it's a school. That sign should be moved. School zone don't stop there. Stop further up on the other side of the. But I just want to say, what I'm hearing, you're want to do cameras in a school zone. Well, no, when we will get a ticket, if we're going 16 miles over the speed limit, are we going 17 or 18 miles over the speed limit? Are we going to get a ticket? Kind of have the state, the city school board have police services at those schools. They have these cars sitting in the parking lot when it's time for school to begin, when they got time for school to end. Those cars ought to be on the street with their light on. So I pay that light on that police car more attention than they do that yellow light blinking. So that folks have their minds set somewhere else sometime and not forget that they're in a school zone. So why is the city going to have, when y'all set this up, the city going to have a way that they're going to have able to look at these things that this contract to give you, they give us a ticket. Going too fast in the school zone. And if you're doing that, that means you're going to have to hire another officer to sit there and look at these things when they come in or whenever. Then that means you got to pay somebody some more. You got to pay more money. And what you're doing, the man that's doing this is trying to get his money and your money too.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anyone else? Public comments related to agenda items today? Yes. Yeah. Ladies first. Good morning.
Okay. I wanted to talk about agenda item 13E regarding
Name and address.
Melissa Strange with the Central Panhandle Association of Realtors. Thank you. 13E agenda item, want to talk about the vacant properties and foreclosures. I know that's just up for discussion today, so I just wanted to ensure that we were going to have some discussions about some extenuating circumstances with those properties, such as homes that might be vacant for more than 30 days when they are sitting as a listing or a rental property, waiting in between renters, things like that, and just how we're going to be managing and overseeing those types of extenuating circumstances so that people trying to sell their homes or get renters into their homes or properties are not further burdened with fees and registration systems and things like that. So I just wanted to bring that up.
I got your back on that.
Thank you. I figured you would, Robbie, but I just wanted to make sure. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Many good questions there.
Hello. Good morning.
Morning. My name's Steve Mulholland. I'm the executive director of the Manning Sea Museum. Where our proper name is Institute of Diving. We're at 17314 Panama City Beach Parkway, Panama City Beach. The agenda item 9B, the Copper Collar 5K, I just want to give you a background of what our goals are with that. The Copper Collar run has been ran on the Navy base since 1982, and it's had some off years due to COVID and Hurricane Michael and things like that. But as a museum of diving history of Bay County, we work directly with the dive school there, NDSTC and NEDU, and we want to expand this history and this great run out in the town. There's no better place to do it than downtown Panama City. We have a great relationship with the Center for Arts, some of the local businesses down there and everything. So we want to expand this run out in town and include the community and enjoy the great history that we have of diving for Bay County and make this an annual run. So I just appreciate your time and your thoughts on letting us do this here. So thank you.
Thank you. Man, the City Museum.
Thank you for your service.
It's an awesome
Thank you for your
museum.
service.
Do you want to move the museum to Panama City?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm looking at your budget.
Come on now.
No, we'll ask you to help.
Anyone else? Public comments related to agenda items? All right, closing those. Consent agenda.
Yeah, I'll just note though, Mr. Mayor, you did call for public comments during 6A. And there, some folks even made those public comments. So you did do that.
Okay, yeah, let's say.
Okay.
I motion we approve consent agenda.
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Awesome.
Okay. We are down to Commissioner's report. Commissioner Street.
Yes, everyone should have received a exact copy of what items and elements would be needed to adopt from Bay County's way they point to the planning board. This arose from historically districts. It hasn't been necessarily that they've all been represented at certain times. Currently, right now, we have no planning board members that reside in the district that I represent. And while there's no requirement to pick someone from the district, it definitely is helpful for me to point neighbors, as have come today, to a particular planning board member that is not living across town, but living in the community they represent. And so this model would allow each one of us to appoint to the board that would serve alongside us and our tenure here on the commission, and represent the communities that we represent, as well as the city as a whole.
So having sat on Panama City's and Bay County's planning board, I will tell you that the way the county does it, the representation it's noticeable. The conversations that take place at the dais are different because just like here, we have our own interest in our own wards. I don't necessarily think it's a better way or a less way, but it's I think a more efficient and complete way. And so I agree with you that now it also runs with the commissioner. So, for example, when when Griff left and went up, he kept Darren. And then Claire came in and she said, "Okay, you stay there." That's because otherwise that person has to leave minus 30 additional 30 days for. So it keeps that appointment with that person, and I agree with that as well, because you have that relationship and that trust with that person making that decision. So 100% agree with that and would fully support you on that.
Yeah, you are elected for a vision. And when the board is just kind of like a vote of who, you're not bringing your vision, your perspective to that board, which is why I think you're elected.
Yeah.
So I like it too.
Yeah, I like it.
So with that discussion, if everyone is supportive of seeing that, we'd have the staff bring back the changes to the ordinance that dictates the planning board. And then our responsibility would be to appoint from either board existing or abroad.
So going forward, how would that work? I mean, as the next person comes off?
Well, there are three positions, there are three individuals whose terms have come up. They're hanging on and continuing to serve until replaced. So you would look at those three and then also the two that are existing and determine between the five of you, if this were adopted, if you wanted to accept any of those, and we can work it out from there.
Fair.
It's a good time to do this because we have 3 already expiring.
It is.
So.
Yeah.
So would this, for the two whose terms are not expiring, would that cut their term off, or would they be allowed to serve the term that they've agreed to serve?
If they are not claimed by any of the commissioners as one of their own appointees, then they would rotate off within 30 days or some. We would put it in the ordinance how that would work.
You mean of the two?
Of the two. There are two, there are 5.
Right.
2 of them, terms have not expired. And so unless 2 different commissioners claim those 2 as their own appointees, then they would rotate off within 30 days or, would put that in the ordinance.
As opposed to being allowed to fulfill the term for which they agreed to serve and then be appointed.
You could do that. I mean, but then if they agree to serve, then you have the issue of, well, which of the 3 of you get your appointments and the other 2 then wait until it's, see, in other words, there are 5 commissioners. 2 of you would not have an appointment until the end of the term of those 2 that are still there.
Who are the 3 that, because there's 2, I think I've got 2 in my ward.
I think you have 3, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are great questions because those are things that staff needs to come back with solutions.
So essentially, if you're not looking to appoint, if you're happy with a particular person representing the district that you represent and serving alongside you, you select them. If you're not, you are free to select whoever you like.
And your appointee does not have to reside in your district, just like some of the charter committee members that were appointed. They weren't all residents of the district of the commissioner that appointed them. The key is
It makes sense. It'll work out that way now.
Logically, eventually.
Yeah, it will.
See, I would love to have somebody like the Gilmores and the residents that it's just a different way of operating. And I had that previously before with Crosby. And so like I would often send people to him.
Right.
He resided in the district and it was something to that. But it just happened in the way that things transitioned and changed that it mixed up. But at that point in time, I think District 3 didn't have a representation at that point. And so this is a fair way, I think, of just balancing it. And, and I mean, I appreciate anybody that serves. So I don't think that it's more or less like what's going to serve us best moving forward.
We're really talking about 4 ward appointments only. His in general. Right, yeah.
I like it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion on this? We just move forward. All right. Mr. Granger, you're up. Or not Granger, skip it out. Mr. Hughes, you're up.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We skip Brian?
We moved out to 8/26.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me?
Talking about 10B.
We moved item 10B to August 26th meeting.
I'd like to, I had an idea after our discussion the other day and watching the past commissions vote on some stuff, and having a savings account is a good idea when we're going to manage something. And So when I asked Nevin about this idea, the intent was really just to have a line item that says savings account. But what I've learned is government accounting, it's not that simple. And so, can it just say savings account? And she says no. But the idea is that if we're going to introduce something that we're going to build, we're going to manage, it's going to cost, and there's going to be a necessary cost for the city. We need to save for that. We need to line item that out, and we need to know how, like right now with MLK, we know it's a brand new building, so maintenance is deferred. Don't need to worry about that. But we do have to staff it. We have to have, all the goods and services that go inside. And rather than have the discussion that we had a couple weeks ago, we say, oh, wow, look at the money we have. And we continue to fund that. But something like that, we don't know right now what the costs are going to be or what income we're going to have from the leagues that are going to pay to be a part of that. So that number can fluctuate right now. But if we and Commissioner Street is going to say, well, it's got to be recurring. Yes, it does. And I agree with that. But at the same time, if we don't start with the concept that we have to have the line item there, we won't think about the recurring. My point at last meeting is we have an immediate problem that I was trying to fix. Now I'd like to try to discuss, in which I believe we might have had that found the money to do that. But now I'd like to discuss going in the future. Everything we do, we have to come up with a vote that says yes, and we're going to start funding it this way. For example, the only way that I'll vote on, and I ran on this on the Beach Drive path, is if we have the money and we have a mechanism to fund that maintenance of that path going forward forevermore. The Beach Drive people do not deserve to have a path that is not maintained across the street from them, especially if they don't want it. Now, Mr. Carruthers, I'm not suggesting that it's happening. I'm just using that as an example. And that is fair to everybody, including the taxpayer, okay? Especially the taxpayer, because now we have to go find where this money is going to come from. If we're budgeting for it, yes, there's an adjustment, but we've budgeted for it along the way. So I'd like to have some discussion about that and get your thoughts on it. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah, I'll start. I love it. It's also creating a better framework. Like, we're not going to be in these positions forever.
Right.
And the next people pick up the torch and they have a better framework, we think, of making decisions, forcing better decisions. And at least if it doesn't force a better decision, it forces communication of the long-term repercussions of things and bringing those to the public as well. So I'm totally in favor for it.
I would echo, I love it. I think that two things that I do programmatically with facilities that I operate and oversee is having a capital replacement reserve. So that would be one item that I want to see. So if we buy a piece of equipment, when does it need to be replaced, and budgeting that over that period of time so that you can pay for it cash at the end. I'd like to see that in that line item, as well as operational cost impact, which is to your point of, okay, what's the useful life of a road? What's the useful life of a sidewalk? That's replacement reserve calculation, but what is the operational cost impact that we need to calculate for in our next year's budget?
Right.
And so taking those two, if we're diligent in doing that over a year period, when we walk into our budget process, we should see this is what needs to be set aside next year in the replacement reserve. This is what needs to be increased for ongoing operational costs to those budget areas.
And the power bill is always going to come, whether it's this year, next year, the following year. We're always going to have a power bill.
And it will create additional weight to the spending decisions that not only happen for us, but happen 10 years from now. Should those commissions keep this process in place.
Well, if we're going to try to find a way to be more fiscally responsible, let's start with saving money first to operate the things that we have. We build nice, pretty, shiny objects, and we need to keep them shiny and pretty.
My personal opinion is let's do it in practice. And then, this could be something that could go forward to the Charter Review Committee of something that codified by the voters and making a requirement so that it would take it out of future commission's hands to be able to do away with it. So it would be by a vote of the people. So those are the elements where, if it's successful, but the first step you've got to do is you've got to try it, and you've got to see, hey, can we do this and can we do it well? So
I'd like seeing it going forward on purchases, but also even the equipment that we currently have. We might say we want anything that the retail value at purchase was X dollars. We want that evaluated as well. So there's no oopsie surprises of some piece of equipment that, we haven't been saving up for. Now we have a catastrophic loss of equipment.
Additionally, things that we might own and not manage, Martin Theater, for example. There needs to be a conversation in that vote of having discussions with management companies back then, in our design phase. We don't manage it, okay? Let's have a conversation with those people back then and now. That's not a cost factor, that's a planning factor, okay? Because there might be a cost for us that we don't know about because we don't operate Martin Theaters. So having these financial discussions at the very front of these and before the vote and identifying how and what we're going to do this, it just makes sense. And I agree with you, Josh, that test driving it 1, 2, or 3 buildings or whatever projects, that works because it's going to show us how hard it is to find the money, as I'm always told. But we're going to find it.
It's an education factor for our citizens.
It is.
I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand there's a useful life on a fire truck. There's a useful life on a road. If you don't start making diligent savings now, you end up in the situation we were back in 2018, where you got money in the bank, but you've also got infrastructure that's in neglect and disrepair. And that's not the situation I would like to see my legacy left for the city. I'd like to be paying the taxes that I need to pay, prioritized in the way that needs to be prioritized, so that my kids aren't trying to catch up for my lack of decision-making in this particular position.
Exactly.
So I'm glad, Mayor, you said that you'd like to provide minimums on this, because I think it's a good idea, but I think the problems run into at the extremes, the most expensive items and the cheapest items. And that's where we run into problems. Strong Towns actually talks about this a little bit in their, especially with roads. Because you can extend the life of a road to be 30, 40, 50 years if you treat it right. And in some cases, if you don't treat it right, it can still just not get wear and tear and last that long. And the problem is when you go from start to finish on that long of a timeline, you talk to somebody in 40 years from now and, think about 40 years back, right? Because of the way our dollar is set up. If you'd have told somebody, hey, we're at $1 million a mile 40 years ago, they'd have laughed at you. Like, there's no way you can afford that. There's no way 40 years ago that somebody would be able to think forward 40 years and say, we're going to be at $1 million a mile. And that's actually going to be, not that we like that, but it's going to fit with what, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so when you look at 40 years into the future, I mean, what if it's 100 million? And that's not shocking to people. Right? You see what I mean? So the idea here is that cities have it is almost an impossible challenge to plan to replace all of your roads and try to raise the taxes in doing so. And it's a mathematical problem. It's not a functional, it's not a decision-making one, it's simply just math. And so that's where I would say that I think it's a great idea. I just think we need to kind of put specifics on it and say, okay, fire trucks, absolutely. Like we lease fire trucks and we lease them for a specific reason. And that gets into state law and other things. And you can talk to Jan and Jared about it. But there's certain things that yes, we absolutely need to know what is the operational cost of owning this. What is the operational cost of leasing a fire truck? What is the operational cost of building a new fire building? And I'm picking on fire here, so sorry, Chief, but it's been on my mind recently. But yeah, absolutely. Like, what is the cost of hiring another person? Right? That's a wrap rate. There's a wrap rate involved in that, and there's training and there's equipment that comes with all that stuff. So.
And had that conversation happened about the MLK Center, we would have never had the conversation we had up here a couple weeks ago. And to that, now, my idea is not about roads as much as it is about operational costs of buildings.
No.
For example, MLK, that's 2 state roads that get you there. I don't control those roads or can't plan for paving those. But, there are plenty of buildings that we operate that we have no mechanism to, we just general fund it. That's what I've learned is general fund is let's make the general fund have more of a purpose. That money is going to there, that money, and let's try to identify less and less opportunity for us to have to make tough decisions. It's already planned. It's made it, it's there. And at some point in time, you find yourself that you have put money in reserves, and reserves is a tough place, but that is reserve money to operate that one place. If there's an excess at the end of the year, we can roll it over. And as we need to, we can modify the amount of money that we put in there. It's just right now, it's just a discussion that we need to figure out how to start that line item is really what I'm after.
So what takeaway does staff need to run forward with this conversation?
So if I may, Mayor, the problem, another problem that I see on piggybacking on what Commissioner Granger was saying. So you got water and sewer infrastructure. You want to plan to rebuild it in 50 years. But you've already got 30 years of debt on it. So you're not only going to be paying off 30 years of debt, you're going to put another 50 years of reserves on top of that. That's going to be extremely expensive for your ratepayers who are already screaming about how much they have to pay for the water and sewer. So, I mean, it's going to take, it's not as simple as shifting from debt payments to reserve payments, right? Because you kind of have to you'll have to transition from debt to reserves. It's not just a simple pay off the debt and build reserves at the same time.
I think this is a willingness to have those tough conversations. And that's, we want to force those tough conversations just like that going forward with not just people up, just us, but people going forward. And so staff needs to figure out if it goes in the charter or if this just gets, is this an ordinance? And then come back.
I think it starts as an ordinance.
Okay, so I guess at some point, what's the takeaway from staff on running forward with this item?
Well, as far as procedurally, I think to start working on something, an ordinance can be changed. Obviously, you have 2 public hearings and you can change it. So it's not written in stone like a charter would be, where you could only change it at a referendum. So as far as the takeaway, we could take each of these items that have been identified on this handout and start working with it, taking into, and I know when Commissioner Hughes talked to me about it, it was focused on operations. The more I thought about it and it got talked around, then it started including more than just operations. But I think it's the theme was, what is the budget impact and how do you prepare for the budget impact? Right. So we could take each of these bullet points, try to come up with a framework for an ordinance and then report back and see how we're doing on it.
So, and I'll give you guys an example. So I've done this particular process that you asked for, for over a decade. And one of the things that happened in that process of replacement reserve on equipment and buildings is initially the funding never really added up to what was needed, because obviously I was trying to make up for the previous year's decisions and previous predecessors that didn't set aside that amount. But then walked in 2018 and Hurricane Michael, and guess what happened? Everything was broken and everything got replaced. And so then now you had a reset on that. What we are getting right now through the things that Jan just mentioned too, is the city is getting a reset in infrastructure that is very significant.
Right.
And so these projects that we complete, we have the opportunity to set aside what is needed 50 years from now to that. Now, does that fix everything that's happened previously? It doesn't. But at least I know I'm not adding to the problem. And I think that's the biggest objective that I have is, hey, I don't want to add to future generations' problems more than we've already inherited.
Right. And I'm not, and to Jan's point, I don't want to pay off the debt and do all the, let's start putting something somewhere so that later on, the debt, if we have a debt problem, we got some money to pay for it. Let's start planning and being fiscally responsible with the money and saying we can't do this because we're going to put it over there.
And guys, in 50 years, we may be flying in cars. We may not need roads.
Matter of fact, according to last night, they're already here.
So just as part of that conversation of where do we store money, as part of my discussions with the clerk and others, the city is prohibited from earning an interest rate. Like, we're prohibited from storing money and actually earning money on the storage of that money, as a city. Right, so,
We're earning money
to
now.
some degree, we're arbitrage, talking about
Right.
arbitrage, right?
You can't earn more than you're paying in interest.
Exactly.
Oh, we can't invest.
We cannot invest in financial products. But, for some reason, we can buy land, and if the land value goes up, that's not considered the same thing.
Let's figure out how to invest and divest of land.
So, again, I can't talk to y'all outside of this meeting about this stuff, right? So,
Use your middle name.
that is one way that I have found that the state doesn't seem to care, the IRS does not seem to care, that if we purchase something now and then in the future we sell it and the valuations are different, that's an asset. That's a difference. That's not a financial vehicle. But if you do the exact same thing with a stock or a bond, then we get in some trouble. We have to pay some tax on that.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nothing wrong with us having mutual funds or anything, or not mutual funds, but I mean, like a money market or.
We have an investment policy of all the items that we're allowed to
We can
invest in.
hold those things, but we cannot earn more than we pay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So Commissioner Hughes, what would you like to see us to do with this today?
Well, it appears that it's favorable amongst the group to ask staff to bring back some framework that would allow us to consider
Ordinance?
an ordinance of the topics that were discussed up here, and then we can massage that if not vote on it the next time. And also talk to your constituents, see do they like the idea of us saving money, of us having a line item? Do they see that differently? Everybody I said, I brought it up to, like, government save money in Atlanta. So being facetious, but at the same time, it's a conversation starter. But I thank y'all for having this conversation with me, because it's very important to me that, to Josh's point, let's leave this place in a better place than we found it. And that is financially, that's the best way we can do that. And this is just a small start.
So I agree with your point that we never should have had to have that conversation we had about staffing the MLK Center. We knew we were building it. We knew it would need to be staffed, programmed, et cetera. I thank you for bringing a solution going forward so that we don't have to do that again. But as our clerk has pointed out, and as we've discussed, it's not so easy with government.
Right.
However, the pendulum has swung in the city of Panama City from the time when we had millions in the bank, but very little maintenance of our infrastructure going on, to the point now we've had to rebuild everything, take out the max loan that we've ever had to take out, and now we're working to see our way forward through that. So thank you for the initiative and the foresight to bring this to us. And if that was a motion, I'll second it.
So we're motioning that staff bring us back something was there a deadline on the
Well,
motion?
let's say by the,
Tomorrow.
right, 2 meetings from now. So that would be what, 30 days?
1 month, okay, 30 days.
We have the framework to consider as an ordinance to adopt.
Just started with next budget year. That's October 1.
Yeah.
Have it ready to go, starting
There you go.
October.
October 1.
Okay.
There you go.
Do we
That
want them
works.
to come back to us?
Make a motion that by
Yes.
October 1, we have the framework and the ordinance language in place. Sir?
So I think, if I may suggest, have them bring it back to us before October 1, but the start date on October 1.
So 30 days from now would be the.
Start discussing.
Would it have to be the
Start- would be
September
the-
9th
right,
meeting and then
give
the
us time to
September
do that.
26th meeting?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second on that.
Yes.
Let's call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
With that, do you need a motion on the planning board discussion, or are we good?
I'm planning on bringing
Okay.
back an ordinance.
That's fine.
Yeah, we got
patterned
direction.
After the counties.
Perfect. All right, let's do a 10-minute recess before the city attorney
That's a good
stuff.
question.
Tap, tap.
So
There we go. All right, we're back.
It's a single mom.
Time to get the party started. We are on the city attorney, item 11A.
Thank you. The item that I have is, was first discussed at the meeting in July, and the commissioners approved in concept to proceed with a purchase contract for the sale of property at 1937 Jinx, and the buyer is the current lessee, which the name of it is 1937 Jinx LLC. The purchase price is $2.8 million. The appraisals are provided for you, and they're significantly less than that. The reason the lessee is most interested in purchasing this property, as it was explained a month ago, is that it needs to put in approximately $7 million of its own money in addition to the insurance money it has been able to recover from Hurricane Michael. And to give it the incentive to do that, it desires to purchase the property because otherwise it would put in $7 million and would only have approximately 15 years to recoup that investment. So it is willing to pay $2.8 million. There's a purchase contract. It states that they will build a nursing home within 5 years, final payment of all insurance benefits. If it's not feasible and they have no knowledge that it won't be feasible at this site, but if for some reason it isn't feasible, they would construct a nursing home at an alternate site within Panama City. Since it's rebuilding a pre-existing facility, provided it's at approximately 120 beds, which it was previous, there'd be no impact fees paid. If the nursing home is not built for any reason within the time frames, the city would have the option, but not the obligation, to purchase the property back at what they paid for it. There is a 5% increase. The goal there is that there not be a debate about what market value is, that we just, pay what we receive for it, but it is not an obligation. The city could choose at that time not to buy the property back. And then finally, there are significant insurance proceeds that have been received, and the purchaser would continue to keep those and then use the insurance proceeds to build the building, all in accordance with the terms in the lease. And the lease is incorporated to the addendum. We do have Commissioner Hughes now, who is in the business of selling real estate, and he helped by reviewing the contract, and I have a few pages there that show some changes. They're word changes. We clarified business days are now all calendar days. That was a change. We also wanted to make certain we could get this in and accomplished during this fiscal year so the money could be in the bank. And so it's 30 days for the survey if the buyer wants a survey. And remember, the buyer has been there for the last 15 years. And then finally, there is, we clarified there was the seller, which is the city, will pay for title insurance, which is about half of the cost of the dock stamps, and that is what the buyer will be paying. And then the last change is just making it clear on the addendum that if the seller exercises the repurchase option, then the purchaser will assign all of the any permits or architectural drawings to the city. So the recommendation is for the City Commission to approve the execution of and it's all been, this has been accepted, and I have a signed agreement back in my office by the purchasers, but they approve the agreement for sale, which includes the addendum, and which will authorize the mayor to sign the closing documents within the next 30, well, before the end of the fiscal year.
Motion approved.
Wow.
Mr. Mayor,
Discussion, yeah.
just real quick, thank you for getting those changes. I just want to point out that what caught my eye again and is the initial, this addendum showed up, by the way, in this packet. It did not come in our initial conversation of this purchase. This 5%, which on the MLK grocery store thing the other day was the CPI. I'm not in favor of paying somebody who doesn't perform to get out of a contract, unless I'm the person being paid, I guess, that didn't perform. So I would like for us to try to think about getting away from that philosophy, but that's what caught my eye. And so here,
Which section?
the addendum of this contract that said that if they didn't build within the time allotted, which is 10 years, then we would pay them back the cost, which was $2.8 million, which is over appraised value. Their costs associated with the project and a 5% plus 5% kick to the other side for not performing. And so the thought here is that if they don't perform, one, we have the option, we don't have to. And two, that $17 million that Nevin spoke about is still in the kitty. Okay, that can be used, and we could go in and build a retirement home on that site as a city if we wanted to. But we're not having to generate that money. Okay? And my concern is that we had to do that. And that would have been back-to-back contracts where the worst thing that could have happened to them under that deal is that they don't perform and they make 5% of their money. That's the worst thing that could happen on the original contract. We want to change that so that the worst thing that can happen is they have to build it. And that's really what we're after. We know that a retirement home goes there. It's been there. And to their lawyer's point, today's rules are a little bit different on how to build. So it might be 110 units. Okay, just let's put something there. But if it was 50 units, just because of the size requirements and things of that nature, that's fine. But let's build it. But anybody that's going to give me money that's over appraised value, I'm in favor of. Just we want to be careful about what we are responsible for on the backside if they do not perform, and that's my concern.
I think it's a valid concern, and I agree with you on the concept of, yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that it's an incentive, but because this is an option that we don't have to exercise. But if it was written in a different way, where it was performative on our behalf, then yeah, I mean, they would have no incentive to build.
Exactly.
It would just be an immediate investment in return of 5%.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with you. But given that this is in front of us today, do you have an issue with as written?
No, sir. These changes are good. Yes, sir.
So you're in favor of including the addendum?
I'm in favor of, with the changes to the addendum and the contract, I'm in favor of this, of proceeding forward. Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? So we have a motion and a second.
Just like to point out again, this is paid above the appraised value.
And I love that. I just don't want to have to pay back above appraised value.
5%. That's true. Very true.
All right, motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, we are on 11B.
This is an item, there's a letter there in front of you. This is a request to request you to schedule an executive session, attorney-client executive session next Tuesday, that is today, at the next city commission meeting, which would be the fourth Tuesday in August. It'll be conducted in room 1030, which is behind the wall there at the back of the room. And at the conclusion of the executive session, the commission will reconvene and take action, if any, prior to adjourning the commission meeting. It's to discuss and receive advice on the Bambi's Dollhouse, Inc. litigation that the city commission's involved in. A court reporter will be present to transcribe the discussion, but the public will not be present during the executive session. At the conclusion of all of the litigation involved, then the transcript from the court reporter will be unsealed and would be available for inspection. We anticipate that there will be 30 minutes, and those that we anticipate being there are listed there in your letter.
Are you looking for a motion?
Yes, please, that we schedule that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Meta discussion of the discussion.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. City Clerk.
City Clerk, item 12A is a notice of vacancy on the Board of Trustees for the City of Panama City Municipal Police Officers Pension Trust Fund. The board has one open position that expires on June 12th, 2029. There are no applicants at this time. This one we thought we had filled, but it turned out the applicant was not eligible to sit on the board. So we have opened it back up for anyone who's interested. Item 12B is a notice of vacancy for the tenant commissioner on the Panama City Housing Authority. The Panama City Housing Authority has one position for a 4-year term that requires a resident who is current in rent in a housing project or a person of low or very low income who resides within the housing authority's jurisdiction and is receiving rent subsidy through a program administered by the authority or public housing agency that has jurisdiction for the same locality served by the housing authority. The city clerk's office has one application that is in the process of interviews for that position. And finally, 12C is the notice of term expirations on the Infrastructure Surtax Citizens Committee. The Infrastructure Surtax Citizens Committee has two positions for 2-year terms that expire on July 28th, 2027. The current members, Ms. Denise Rowan, Commissioner Hughes' appointment, and Mr. Fred Denicky, Commissioner Granger's appointment, have expressed interest in retaining their positions on the committee. So if it pleased the board, you may vote on those two applicants at this meeting.
Motion, we keep the 2 applicants.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, let's call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you for your service. City Manager.
All right, item 13A is consideration to approve Budget Amendment 202-50812.1 to transfer vehicle insurance proceeds received for a Panama City Police Department vehicle in the amount of $9,600 to be used for the purchase of 4 electric bicycles to be used by the Panama City Police Department. As background information, in March of 2025, a 2020 Dodge Durango was totaled and the city received insurance proceeds for the vehicle. The proposed purchase of 4 electric bicycles or e-bikes to be used by the Panama City Police Department would support officers on foot patrol in efforts such as downtown St. Andrews and downtown Panama City during peak business hours in our entertainment districts. E-bikes offer increased officer visibility while maintaining a low environmental impact. Staff recommendation to the Chief of Police is that the Commission approve this request and the budget amendment.
I'm entertaining a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do we replace the car that was taken out of commission, the police car?
I think it was probably extras.
Yeah, we have a reserve fleet. This vehicle that was damaged, we didn't get enough money in insurance proceeds to replace it. So we've utilized the reserve fleet, plus we've done some personnel reductions in next year's fiscal, or next year's budget proposed, that we'd be okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
The commission has adopted Resolution 2025-0812.1, a resolution providing for the amendment of the approved fiscal year 24-25 budget to utilize insurance proceeds to purchase electric bicycles for the police department.
Item 13B is consideration of approval to transfer fire protection service revenues in the amount of $42,750.00 to purchase 2 side-by-side and various fire prevention materials and approval associated budget amendment resolution 2025-0812.2. As background information, the Panama City Fire Department is requesting to transfer fire protection service revenues in the amount of $42,750 to purchase 2 side-by-side and various fire prevention materials. These items will enhance the fire prevention division with public education and training materials, and the 2 side-by-sides will be utilized during special events to assist fire department personnel with access and mobility through special event areas. It provides personnel a way to also transfer patients out of a special event area. One of those units will provide that opportunity. The purchase of these items is being funded by revenue funds from the Fire Protection Service revenues, which, as a reminder, are restricted funds. This request is also to request approval of Budget Amendment Resolution 2025-0812.2 to use these revenue funds to purchase the items. Staff recommendation through the Fire Chief is that the Commission approve this request and the accompanying Budget Amendment Resolution. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion? All right, call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Commission has adopted Resolution 2025-0812.2, a resolution providing for the amendment of the approved fiscal year 24-25 budget to utilize fire permitting fees to purchase supplies and 2 side-by-sides for the fire department.
Item 13C is consideration of approval accepting a waiver and hold harmless agreement with Centennial Bank located at 2200 Stanford Road in accordance with ordinance number 2603. As background information, the Panama City Fire Department conducted its annual fire inspection at Centennial Bank in July. During the inspection, it was found that the location did not have a Knox box installed as required by City Ordinance 2568. The occupant requested they be granted a waiver and hold harmless agreement by the City of Panama City, where they would not be required to install the Knox box at this location in accordance with Ordinance 2603. The occupant was informed of the hold harmless agreement and the conditions associated with entering in this agreement. Staff recommendation through the Fire Chief is that the Commission approve the waiver and hold harmless agreement with Centennial Bank in accordance with our Ordinance number 2603. That's a little background information. A Knox box, as we explained, gives fire department a little bit easier access if there is some type of alarm. If a business doesn't want to provide that and our fire department still feels like they need to access the building, they're going to access the building, and there's going to be some damage to it. So that's why we require them to fill out a hold harmless.
Motion we approve.
Second.
Discussion? I'd love, not to unpack a whole thing about Knox boxes, I think we should be discussing anytime a vendor brings an ordinance like this. This is an old ordinance that was passed years ago that a Knox box vendor brought, and they bring to cities. And so I know they tried passing it downtown. Downtown doesn't have any Knox boxes that I'm aware of. And so I'm just not a huge fan.
I think there's one at City Hall, right? Yeah.
I don't have one. Yeah, my buildings do.
Oh, man.
Well, then we're just coming in the front door then.
Knox box, man. Knox box, man.
Is this just for new construction? Is that why, or?
I'm not.
Or is it because it's a bank and that's specifically why it came up?
I think they chose not to. I mean, I'm assuming there's some banks that do allow it, some don't.
Looking at old ordinances.
Yeah, looking at old ordinances that this is an unintended consequence. Other cities don't have Knox boxes. What do they do? Are we just imposing more ordinances on people where they have, I'm just not a big fan of it.
Well, to me, it saves money for the building because they can easily access it if it's not a major fire and they just need to get in there and set the alarm off.
I agree with the Knox box scenario, but I do think this should be a staff level decision on waivers. I don't know why that has to come to the commission.
Because it's an ordinance, I believe. It's an ordinance that.
So we just need to modify the ordinance to allow staff level to operate or granting waivers.
Don't disagree. I would say that if we're going to modify the ordinance, make it voluntary. So there's no need for a waiver. I mean, if you want your door kicked in every time fire shows up, then don't put a Knox box out there. If you want your, I'm with you on that one. It's
Every time the fire shows up, you got a problem.
Yeah, I mean, like.
well, not every time. You can get
Well, it
fatal
could be
alarms
something
involved.
simple, it's just an alarm going off.
We've got buildings in Callaway, we got buildings in Panama City Beach, they all have Knox boxes. I don't know what the, I mean, it's a pretty standard thing. And the reason why you have unified Knox boxes, so the fire marshal just has one key to get in. And so your response time and getting into the building is shorter. And what if it's a false alarm? Then we're gonna have people calling us saying, hey, you kicked
Fix
in
my
my
door.
door, you know, for that. So the premise of a Knox box, I can argue all day long why that, but this process of having to come to the commission for an exemption, or if somebody's willing to say, hey, I don't care if you knock on my door, regardless of what business it is, then we should be able to accept that. Yeah.
If y'all'd like, we can work with Mr. Zimmerman and Chief Collier to update that ordinance and bring it back maybe sometime in October, beginning of the fiscal year.
And by that premise, it would be voluntary, because if you're willing to say, hey, if the alarm goes off, you can kick my door in, then great, okay, move on.
Awesome. So we have a motion and a second to accept. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, item 13D is consideration to approve the special event permit for the Bay County Annual Veterans Day Parade on November 11th, 2025, which will take place from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. along 11th Street, sponsored by the Bay County Veterans Services Office. This would require road closure on 11th Street from Frankfurt Avenue east to Woods Avenue. Background information for the commission's consideration. Can we rotate that, Mr. Schwartz? I don't want anybody to hurt their neck. Thank you, sir. For the commission's consideration, and closes the application for the Bay County Veterans Day Parade scheduled to take place on Tuesday, November 11th from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. along 11th Street, again from Frankfurt Avenue to Woods Avenue. This is Exhibit A in your packet. The annual parade features approximately 60 vehicles and marching bands in honor of our veterans. The special event fee totals to $275, which includes a refundable security deposit and an application fee. Police presence will be required with approximately 20 officers in their vehicles assigned to support the event, close the roads and ensure participant safety. Also enclosed as Exhibit C is an official email from the Bay County Commission Office, the county manager, requesting that the City Commission waive the event fees and the subsequent police fees in recognition of the parade's purpose to honor and support our veterans. Staff recommendation through the City Manager's Office that the Commission approve this request, and I believe that y'all will also have a float in it as well. So.
And the security fees were $4,800, if memory serves.
I'll motion to approve, and I believe, just based upon this being veterans, this is something that's been going on for years upon years. This should be our contribution to this event. So moving forward, we should find a way to incorporate this in our yearly expenses.
Roger that.
Second, I have more to add to that.
All right, discussion.
So this is, can we get the map back up, please? You don't have, okay, no, we're getting the hands thrown up. Something happened, it's technical. So as y'all saw probably earlier, the route is very simple. It's pretty much a straight line. So what I'm looking for is more, what can we do to not have so many police officers required? Like, what can we do to purchase devices in the future that can be placed by maybe public utilities can place those devices that prevent vehicles from speeding down a road and slamming into a parade. That's really what I'm looking for. I understand we're doing a lot of police work for MOT, and I'm not trying to cut the police completely out of this because I realize that they are required. But I think some of the justification for having so many police officers is, well, there's so many road intersections. Well, great, let's close up all those road intersections. And it can be something as simple as those giant barriers that are filled with water.
Jersey barriers.
Yeah, those things. Or I know we have some other ones that will stop a speeding car.
In New York, they just park their equipment.
Yeah, like
just
dump trucks and
code enforcement vehicles and.
I mean, there's got to be another way other than having 20 police officers for this parade. And all I'm asking for is solutions for that.
I think by incorporating it into the yearly budget, that should be an automatic motivation.
Well,
agreed. Find the savings.
And Commissioner, you are correct. We do have the system called that Panama City Beach Police bought, and we've kind of, they don't have a place to store it, so we've got access to it because we have a place to store it. We've contributed as well to the Archer system. That's the type of device you're talking about. They do have lengthy deployment periods because they are very, very heavy. But we can look at a way to incorporate that, reduce police officer involvement as well, and still keep it safe. So we'll look to do that, come up with another plan.
I mean,
It may be incorporated inside of this already. I'm not aware.
can we do something like get the big barriers that hold water and just pump water into them? Can we do something like that? I mean,
We've already got a solution that'll work with the Archer system. I mean,
you have enough of them?
I think we've got 80.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if one blocks an entire road or it takes 2 or 3, so.
Takes
we'll-
2 typically.
We'll take a look at it. I mean, we deployed them.
Whatever's the simplest.
So, well, hauling in barriers, filling them up with water, then draining them and hauling, that's definitely not quick.
Well, it's not
Yeah.
free, but it's potentially a reduction.
Yeah, it's probably a huge reduction. Yeah. And it puts less of a strain on our police resources that are already strained. So this brings up another discussion. Last year, which some of you weren't here on the dais, we discussed having certain events that the city would sponsor moving forward. Because one of the problems that we were running into is that a lot of event sponsors want to come to us and ask for their fees to be waived. And that's usually not the problem. It's usually not the fee issue because it's $275. It's usually the requirement of the police officers, and sometimes, while this is a very simple route with a lot of intersections, sometimes the routes are very complicated and with a lot more intersections. And then that causes the police cost to drastically rise. I remember one event we had to cancel because it was close to $48,000 just in police. Wow. Just in police. And that was going to be a great event, but it wasn't able to move forward because we didn't have it in our budget to pay for the police officers, because this is labor. We're paying for labor. And it's not included in our budget. So it's got to come from somewhere. And so I think there's a discussion here that we've kind of already entered into, but of like, where do we bring down resources and where do we boost resources? But I think there's another part of this discussion that is, what events are we going to say we're going to fund them throughout the year? That's what that's the other piece of that conversation. Like the Christmas parade, right? Like that's probably going to be one that we're going to fund. So what are we probably need to have a discussion in the future on what this commission wants to fund for events in 2026, 2027.
Yeah, so let's do a virtual workshop.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So back to this, just operationally, like I do want to say, when the police look at these events, when big crowds gather, it's not just road closures that their threat assessment includes. It's also potential for mass casualty events, protecting those citizens that are attending those events from more than just an errant driver entering a parade ground or somebody that's looking to enter the parade.
And those can stay there because we're taking, his suggestion is to take them off the blocking the intersections, but those would not be, messed with because they're not factored into the road blocking.
Well, at that point, you don't need 20. I mean, I don't think anybody's making the argument that we don't need any police. I think it's just more of, do we need...
And it's the paid up front too. I mean, that's not, before we even discuss anymore, we got to pay the cops, and then we'll start talking about giving permits. That's a big cash infusion for these guys up front. I agree. To your point of what's going to, who we're going to cover and who we're not, if we are at all. At the end of the day, these guys, they put their life on the line. They signed the dotted line. They said they'd die for their country. I'm all for taking care of something like that. Same with cops, same with fire department. They do something different than I do. And I get that opens up the can of worms if everybody wants that done. But if you set a requirement of, if you sign your name on the dotted line, that keeps a lot of those requests down. But I agree with you. We got to curb these costs a little bit.
Yep. As a veteran.
And thank you for your service, by the way.
My pleasure. That wasn't where I was going with that. But as a veteran who lives in a community who loves its veterans, I don't have a problem with this event at all. I encourage it, but it does spark the conversation of the overarching, because we're cutting $8 million out of the budget. If we have another event sponsor come to us and say, hey, I would like to do something similar, will you waive it? We probably need to have that conversation with them on this. That's not going to happen. Like, the only reason this one's getting waived is because it's for all veterans for the entire county.
Name me one parade in the city of Panama City that pays for itself.
It doesn't.
The amount is too much. You wouldn't have a parade.
They don't.
So unless we're willing to say no to a parade, like, there's always going to be some subsidization of parades because they're so intensive.
I don't think you're trying to make them pay for themselves or doing net zero. Just try to, I think to Brian's point, do you really need that many cops? I mean, I went to an event over in Pensacola, and that was their, what used to be our Festival of the Arts, you know, and Matt in their downtown public park. I counted 6 cops, and I walked around the entire place. I get what Jared's talking about, and
The ones you could see.
But at the same time,
The ones you could see.
I walked all the way around the ones. Well, fair enough. But my point is, let's make it so that it's easier for that check to get written. I'm already asking that maybe that our application's a little cumbersome. Maybe we can knock it down a little bit as well. But at the same time, if we can make it more affordable, it's easier for them to want to come back and want to do it. And it's not net neutral. It's not going to be.
No.
Yeah.
And if we need to, we can probably find a sponsor, take care of this application fee for the veterans. I probably got
My thing is, we should be
companies to do that. One right here.
No.
One right here.
So that's a great point, and there's an overall discussion that I'm kind of trying to get to. Is it's not just parades; it's all events, and a lot of times these events come to the city and want the city to bear the entire cost, right? And so yeah, I absolutely agree. There's plenty of companies locally that would be willing to sponsor certain events, and so that's where I think just that conversation probably needs to be had. Again, not necessarily with this one, but I'm just talking overall, because now what you're going to see is you're going to see more events come to us and say, hey, we'd like to have that.
Sure.
We'd like to have that.
So
thing.
what does staff need here in this discussion to move forward?
Just your approval.
To approve all the event, but then you have enough discussion to move forward with.
And as a reminder, Mr. Mayor, we'd already said that the September virtual workshop was going to be the PD, and Chief Smith will be on there with Jared and I, and so we can speak to that. And he's got over 40 years' experience in law enforcement.
I love it. Awesome. So we have a motion and a second.
Which including counting for this moving forward.
Did we determine whether that's a holiday for the city? Because we have a scheduled city commission meeting on November 11th. That's the second Tuesday.
Yeah, November 11th is a holiday.
You were going to ask for one meeting in November.
Yeah, we usually do one in November and one in December.
Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking, the virtual workshop, one of the virtual workshops is being canceled in September because of a holiday. I thought that's what you initially were asking. No, we haven't addressed November, December yet.
Yeah,
There
we
won't
need to
be a
get-
conflict.
Okay.
So,
Come on, Ned. He always texts me about 3 weeks ahead.
well, that's like
I mean, come on,
3
Ned.
months ahead.
You're falling off your spot there, man.
There you go.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
13E is discussion of proposed ordinance entitled Registry of Vacant Property and Foreclosing Mortgages. As background information, a member of the City Commission requested staff research a process to address the deterioration, crime, and decline in value of neighborhoods caused by vacant and foreclosing properties. The ordinance as proposed addresses these issues by creating a registration program to help identify, regulate, and reduce the number of vacant and foreclosed properties lacking adequate maintenance and upkeep. The ordinance would require mortgage holders, creditors, and owners of vacant properties and structures to register their property with the city. The ordinance proposes an initial registration fee of $300 for properties under foreclosure, $125 for a vacant residential property, and $500 for a vacant commercial property. The fee shall be used to offset the cost of administering the registry, whether by the city or by a company specializing in these services. The fees can also be used to offset the cost of code compliance and mitigation for vacant properties. The ordinance also establishes maintenance and security requirements for vacant properties and structures, which are verified through a regular inspection process. Following documents are enclosed the proposed ordinance. Director of Development Services and the City Manager's Office recommends the Commission discuss its interest in considering the registry of vacant property and their desire for staff to bring this ordinance forward. Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, let's have a discussion. Who wants to start?
I'll motion we approve for discussion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, I think, well, I believe the intent is good here. It's probably a little far reaching as well.
How so?
Well, why is it the government's need to know if I have a property that's vacant? It's my response, it's my property. And why is it government's need? If I'm taking care of it, I'm not violating any codes, why does the government need to know about that?
I would submit to you that a property who meets that criteria would not wind up on this list.
But that's not what that says. That says vacant property.
Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't about, but this is about vacant property, not a code violation vacant property. This is, the requirement is vacant. So, for example, a HUD house. HUD house is taken care of, the grass is cut, HUD owns it. The last thing HUD's going to do is pay you $300, and the last thing they're going to do is file with our registry for the for Panama City. Same with the foreclosure mills, same with the lawyers' offices, same with the banks and the mortgage holders. We're going to call every mortgage holder that has a vacant property, commercial or residential, and say, I need y'all to pay $150 or whatever it is and sign up for the registry. Thank you, goodbye. We deal with them on a regular basis of trying to get a document signed that's not in their wheelhouse, and we don't get that done. So from that operational standpoint there, we're going to have some trouble. But at the same time, I have trouble with the government needs to know that my property is vacant. I don't. Why?
So I think the purpose behind this is the vacant properties that are causing issues, where code compliance then doesn't know, they don't have a good point of contact, because we do have several places around town that are owned by people who are not local, and that's okay. But some of them put more effort into their properties than others. We had the Sears building torn down because they were not taking care of their.
And that's a code violation.
It's a code violation, yeah. So all this ties into code, because if we pass this, if we move forward with this and pass this, all of this would be under code compliance. That's the purpose of it. It's all under code compliance. And so just like everything else in code compliance, if code doesn't know about it because nobody's complaining about it, then nothing happens.
Okay, but they're already complaining about, right now, currently, they complain about a vacant property or any property, it goes to code. But since we're talking about vacant, it's vacant and the grass needs cut.
Yeah.
Well, if the house is fine and the grass, now it's compliant, why does it still need to be registered that it's vacant?
But what if, so that order of operations is fine, and that's generally speaking what we want to have happen. What happens when code compliance goes to the vacant residential house and the grass is 3 feet tall, and they pull up the owner, and it's owned by a company, and you get into the shell game of the company and they have no idea who in the world to talk to. So
okay.
The idea is that, and then they find out later it's going through a foreclosure.
Okay.
So the point is that if they run into a property, they would have this tool set that they would be able to say, hey, we've identified this property as a vacant property. We've had difficulty in getting in touch with your POC. Now you need to go on the registry so that we know who to contact.
So, if we can't find them in the code to get the grass cut, how do we find them and get them on the registry? I promise you, getting a bank to answer on a foreclosure,
yeah.
32 years I've been doing this, I still haven't figured that one out. There's people in the real estate community that have, they pick up the phone and call the right person. I haven't.
I don't think
that's a
you've done
difficult
that
thing.
as a government yet, though, is my point.
Do what?
I don't think you've done it as a government entity yet.
I think banks will respond to a government entity more so than they would respond to non-government entities.
But whether it's government or me, it still doesn't take away from the fact that government doesn't need to know my property is vacant.
It does when it impacts
If
others.
if I can clean it up, if I can make it clean, why does it matter that it's vacant?
Because it's, I think you're getting hung up on the word vacant.
No, sir. Because I can live in my house and Panama City code violate, I can be code violated for my grass being over 12
Yeah,
inches tall.
absolutely.
I don't have to be vacant or, that vacant is the key here. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this, do you think that this would cover property that doesn't have any buildings on it?
It doesn't have any what?
That doesn't have a building on it?
Under the terms of this, no, sir.
Okay. So.
This is simply on vacant buildings.
Yeah, so you have certain areas of town that have buildings that are vacant. They're just sitting there. Nothing's happening with them. Nothing's moving. Nothing's doing anything. When our code compliance has issues with those buildings, where maybe vagrants are going in, setting fires, or doing what have you, this would allow for them to have a registry to immediately go to have a conversation with somebody to have the issue addressed.
Okay, so I'm the liaison between Panama City Police and the Hawks Nest owner. And there's a building that's been vacant for 12 years. I've only worked on it for 17, never made $1, so if y'all want to like somebody that works for free, that's me. Three Christmases ago, Christmas Eve at 12 o'clock, 2 vagrants broke in. Police were there. They started a fire inside because it was cold. Okay, so what worked was the police got in, I helped, we did that and moved on. Code violation was at one point in time that the marina didn't work, and all that had to be rebuilt. All that's worked without there being a vacant registry. So what I'm hung up on is the need for the registry when I can give you example after example, having been on the planning board and code enforcement board, I understand that is a process that can take a long time to get compliant, especially if somebody knows how to work the system.
I'd say that your statement of it worked previously is actually incorrect because the building still sits vacant.
Well, no. Cleaning it up, cleaning up, not the vacant part of it, but cleaning up the building.
Drive-by, it's a disaster.
Well, it is now, but it needs to be code violated because like all the lattice is coming off on the bottom.
Sure.
You know, if just because the parking lot is dirty doesn't mean that it's a violation. It just means that the parking lot's dirty, right?
Violation of
our code. You can't have grass over 12 inches tall, but you can have a dirty parking lot. Okay, not mean like sand and gravel and that type of stuff. I'm just trying to understand why we need to make a vacant property.
So there are absentee land owners here.
Yes, sir. 40% of it, he owns 40% of downtown.
I'm not talking about anybody in specifics. I'm just saying we have absentee landowners. And my point here is that this would cause some of those absentee landowners to appoint or pay somebody local to deal with code compliance. So code compliance would have somebody that they would be able to pick up the phone and call or talk to or email to address any issue that would arise with a vacant building. That makes our code compliance much more efficient.
But that's not what this is saying.
Yeah, it is.
This is saying you got to register, you got to pay a fee, and you got to annually pay a fee. That's what this is. This is a fee generator. I'm looking for the reason that the vacant part of this status, let's just say that I live in the property, okay, and it's a disaster.
Michael.
Now that's a code problem.
Can you come to the podium, please?
But it's not vacant if you live in it.
But my point is, it can be a disaster whether I live there or not.
Yeah, so you could offer like voluntary registry for like discounts on your first code enforcement fines if you have any or something like that. So
annual fees, I thought this is a one-time thing.
So in the ordinance, this is of course up for discussion and anything can be changed. So right now staff got together.
Name and title, please, ma'am.
I'm Natalie McSwain. I'm the Chief Assistant City Attorney. And I'm here to help out Michael Fuller. Told him I'd help. It's all up for discussion. So it's a semi-annual fee right now, and that was just a roundtable discussion with your staff. It can be an annual fee. So
we haven't decided anything on this. There's no, that's kind of,
the commission would have to adopt it, and so it's up to you.
Yeah, it's going to be looked at like a revenue generator. So I would agree with that. Like, one more thing I got to register for, doggy barking permits.
You want to go back to speed cameras?
Yeah, but it's automated. That's my point.
Well,
So is this?
There's some small towns that have, requirement that if you're going to be on the main street, you got the facade of your building has to be, look like it's operational. And that's a requirement of an individual. But to group everybody into, if we're trying to go after specific, I know it's not specific to one person, but it doesn't make sense to go into every residential neighborhood and say every vacant house in there's got to be registered, because you don't know if it's in the middle of a redo. When I buy a house and flip it, it's vacant for 6 months.
Okay.
It's undone and uninhabitable. Do I need to register it?
So two things. One, this in premise, it comes from a philosophy on Revitalize or Die, and how communities that are experiencing an absorbent amount of vacancies, which ultimately creates economic depressed values, increases crime, transient activity, you name it, that's what leads into. So that's the premise behind this. I do agree that I think this is very unclear to me. So what I would say is start with the problem that you're trying to solve for without obviously shaming neighbors. We get phone calls all the time, and I think this is a response to what our citizens are asking us to do, which is hold property owners accountable in the same way that my neighbor would be held accountable to, as far as on the quality. So there's a code enforcement piece to that. But I do think where we could be valid in looking at something like this, if we defined it with gateway overlays, specifically in commercial corridors that are high visibility, that ultimately when you drive people through town, people ask what is going on with that? And make it very difficult for us to encourage new business activity because of the lack of initiative and taking care of things in the gateway overlay is an example of that. Another example could be properties that are routine offenders and code enforcement violations, where we've shown a history of activity, as in this property owner is not taking care of their property in such a way. Maybe there is a registration process so that ultimately code enforcement, because it happens all the time, has got a clear point of contact and a mechanism to create additional accountability for that. Those are two that I think could be places to look that are more defined rather than a blanket approach, because a vacant property, if I go on vacation and I want to, and there are residents in St. Andrews that do this, they go on vacation, they're gone for 60 days, they call up Jan and they say, hey, we need to shut off our water or our trash for a period of time. And, they're technically it meets the no vacancy requirement, but do they really need to have to do that? I mean, they're good neighbors. I mean, and most of them have, yard service, so the yard's even getting cut during that time. So maybe there's a way for us to kind of look at this, define philosophically, this is a tool that is used to revitalize communities experiencing what we're doing. So from a philosophical standpoint, I can get behind it, but from a overreaching standpoint, we need some very defined parameters. I think the gateway overlay is our first one to kind of look at.
So I would agree, and even say narrow it down further to see if the DIB would be willing to have it just on Harrison Avenue, and they run the registry, because often what happens is they come to me and they say, well, what's for rent downtown? I'm like, I don't keep a log of every single property downtown, but the DIB does. The DIB tries to keep up with building owners, tries to keep up with businesses, because they're coming and going constantly. And people are always coming to the DIB saying, what's for rent, or what can I buy? And so maybe they're a small enough test, and we narrow it down just from 6th Street down to Government.
I like the idea. I would suggest that we keep it under code compliance because of the legalities there, and because of the funding that is of, I don't know the DIB could impose fees on folks. There's some
Yeah,
fees there.
but maybe they're the mechanism of, well, I hate the idea of fees.
Keep the scope.
Yeah, my thought, maybe they're the test of what is the register, is there fees? I'd prefer no fees, it should be voluntary.
I would like to look at like something along the lines of vacancies specifically in gateway overlays, if there's something specifically to that. So, and why that would be important to us is, one, it is the most visible, which ultimately can either encourage or discourage investment. But the other side of it is our tax base relies on retail and commercial activity. And if we don't have that, like we're not paying the appropriate amount to the police and fire that's used doing that. So, and if you look at that map on where the gateway overlays are sitting, you can define who would fit into the no vacancy. And I don't think 30 days is probably to that. I mean, some of these no vacancies have been vacant for 7 years. I think that is definitely a different thing than somebody that's vacant for 30 days.
I could get behind that for the commercial side of things, but for the foreclosure portion, I think the biggest problem. So there's multiple problems inside of this that this thing is looking to solve, and one of them is that in a neighborhood you have people keep up their houses and they keep their neighborhood looking nice, and then you'll have one house that is undergoing foreclosure, and the people who are under that foreclosure don't live there anymore, nor do they care about what happens to that house because they're not paying on it anymore, right? And so then, like he said, a bank takes over, and the bank is in New York or somewhere else, and they don't care that the grass is 3 feet tall. And so what the problem is that when code enforcement goes to try to find a person to say, hey, these things need to happen, one of the problems that they run into is nobody cares. And there's nobody who's willing to talk to you because they don't want to talk to you. But if we were to pass this with the foreclosure piece on it, then the banks are the ones that wind up paying the $300. And under an ordinance, I believe that we'll get more traction on it than others may have. And then they would also have to. So in talking with other people,
registration process.
in talking with other people who have implemented this in the state of Florida, what most banks do is they will hire a local real estate agent to be the property manager.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. The foreclosures will not have high grass. The foreclosures are actually taken care of. It's the people that.
Not all of them.
Not 90% of them. I mean, it's the people that walk away, the renters. Your foreclosure properties are generally more well-maintained than most because the bank has an interest in that property and they want it to make sure that it stays in the best shape possible until they sell it. My experience is that your rental properties, your paid-for rental properties, you're going to find more lack of care in maintenance on those that are owned by individuals. Well, you hear slumlords or sometimes own 50, 60 properties, you're going to find it in that more. But when it comes to the vacancy of a contractor building, a foreclosure, because in Florida, that's a lawsuit, okay? It takes a while. And where in California, you just give your house back.
Yes.
We actually have to file a lawsuit again, so it takes a little while. So you're going to be vacant for a while. I feel like we're jumping into an area where the government is saying, we're going to watch you. We're big brothers here, and that just concerns me that door gets opened, and that's my biggest concern.
They file that lawsuit in county courthouse, and they pay the fees to do so. And the county doesn't have to chase them down to go find foreclosure fees. So that my point is that if they go file at the county, and we've passed an ordinance that basically says you've got to pay a $300 registration fee to put a property under foreclosure, then it's not the people who are being foreclosed upon that are going to pay that. It's going to be the people who are looking to foreclose the property, and so when that happens, the court can then say, oh, here's a $300 fee for the city municipality through this ordinance. And the folks that I've talked to elsewhere in the state of Florida who have implemented this don't have any problem collecting foreclosure fees from banks.
So this is the part where you're saying it's automatic?
Yes.
Because it's handled through the courts?
Correct.
And not by our code compliance or,
Oh, the foreclosure piece is, yes. And what's that?
It's automated.
And then what winds up happening is that they have to provide some point of contact locally or non-locally, but what most banks will do is they'll hire somebody locally to manage that property. So if their grass gets to be too high or there's some kind of issue where a foreclosure goes sideways on them, that our code compliance people are not having to chase down who potentially owns the property this minute.
so will there be a point at which records are searched to determine who's vacant and notices automatically sent out?
No.
So if I am the owner of family property, I no longer live here, I pay my taxes, I keep it cleaned, and I don't register, somebody's coming after me because it's a vacant building?
I don't think so because,
But they can if we put this in place.
I mean, I guess they could technically say, hey, this is a vacant property, you should pay for the thing.
Being vacant isn't the problem.
Correct.
So
But it is under this ordinance.
exactly. That we're using this reason of vacancy to solve for a different problem.
Is there another term that we could use?
It's already in place. It's the code, it's code enforcement, and you have to file a complaint with code enforcement, and they take care of that.
Yep.
That's the process
The
already.
problem is the code enforcement, when they come to a building, that they don't know who in the world is in charge of the building. That's the problem that we're
Then
solving.
could this
we have a
ordinance
process-
address that part of the problem as opposed to casting a broad net?
Well, it's just called a vacancy. It's I think,
A vacancy that has not responded to code compliance, and after X amount of time, this could kick in. So now we're addressing the problem that you identified as the problem, as opposed to saying the vacant building is the problem and everybody has to pay.
I think what you're going to find is that it's not going to be implemented unless somebody has a complaint. Unless somebody says, hey, the grass is too tall here, or this building is falling apart, there's a broken window. I think that's what you're going to find is that that's how it's going to be implemented. I think if you took care of your property, like the citizens that Commissioner Street was talking about that go on a vacation for 60 days, I'd love to do that, by the way.
But that out isn't in this ordinance as it's retired.
Right. the way that-
Yeah, but I don't think code enforcement would come to the conclusion that it's technically vacant, if that makes sense, because it's being taken care of.
Mortgage holders, owners, property managers, everybody has to register this property if it's vacant, no matter what. It's not about a complaint. It's the vacancy, the way this is written, it's the vacancy that's the
Yeah.
catalyst to get, that starts the whole thing, not a code violation.
And I think what you're running into is when we write ordinances, we have to write it for everybody. We can't write it for specific people. We can't write an ordinance that says only owners who own vacant buildings.
Right.
Like it has to apply to everybody. Anytime we write an
should write
ordinance.
it if it doesn't fit for everybody. I mean, that's-
Well, we do that all the
If we're
time.
going to penalize the mass
You
for
can't do
the
an
few.
ordinance for an area? You can do it on air, or.
You can do ordinances
Yeah.
for geographical areas,
Yeah.
yes, but
Okay.
it has to apply to everybody in that geographic area.
Yeah, I think that's my point, is the further you go out to the neighborhoods and residents and vacations, it gets more and more complicated, all the corner cases. But I think it's more interesting, maybe easier to track if you could relate it to merchant fees and commercial buildings only in certain areas. Otherwise, you get into the.
Yeah, I don't even know the legalities of doing commercial only.
At what
You
point
can
does
do commercial
Another
only.
buyer come in and say, I want to buy this property because it's been registered, it's derelict, it's whatever. Does this allow that process to happen faster in the spirit of revitalization?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the intent.
Yes, that is the true intent behind this, but you can't, it's very incredibly difficult to write an ordinance for buildings you think need to be revitalized.
I mean, because it's a very subjective thing.
Yeah, it would be, just to bring up the history, that this ordinance, certain elements of the ordinance and the idea was brought to us by the DIB a year or two ago, and then it's, then we had another vendor who brought forward this ordinance. It's been used, different versions of this ordinance has been used throughout Florida.
Mostly in commercial areas?
Just, this ordinance is a sample of ordinances that have been used, so it's not just commercial areas, it does include the residential properties as well. And then there's a definition of the vacant property, what's a indication of vacancy, and it would be, going to your point, it would be issues that code compliance would be inspecting. So you'd have high grass, you'd have litter, you'd have accumulation of, boarded up doors and windows. So that evidence of vacancy would draw your attention under code compliance as well.
Yeah, it's not just the fact that nobody lives in the building is the vacancy portion of it. It's the fact that it looks like nobody's taking care of the property. That's the vacancy. That's what would trigger the vacancy portion.
And there's also a time period in here that you could extend in there. Right now, a vacant property has to be vacant for 12 months. So, I mean, you could change that.
I could see a registry, especially if it's voluntary or encouraged somehow, because there are times with code enforcement or fire department, we've kicked in your door, we thought there was a fire, there was no Knox box, and we need to get a hold of you now. And so I can see that being like a helpful tool just for communication, not just revitalization. The idea that we're going to increase staff requirements to do things makes me a little bit nervous. I wish there was some sort of like voluntary, with your water bill, you have to submit a thing or something.
This goes under enterprise fund, so the more that they would be able to collect, the more they would be able to hire.
The ordinance does establish a designee.
There was Hera, I believe is.
Hera Registry?
Yeah, they were one that does, they do this, and they do this for multiple cities across the state of Florida, as well as elsewhere.
All online?
Pardon?
All online?
Yes.
We could link that in like water bills and things where it's like, hey, make sure you know who you are, if someone else owns the property or
Could
something.
we get like a packet of information on that specific program? Because I think that might help get a better understanding of why an ordinance is needed.
Yes.
What I want to avoid is, oh gosh, this is the hardest place to own property in the whole state. You got to register for this and register for that. Yep. That's what we're trying to avoid.
So,
And this becomes the hammer and search of the nail. I mean, if it's subjective, which is what we're talking about, there's subjectivity here, then, and we've talked about, well, maybe let's just do it downtown, or maybe let's just do it on the gateways. I'm concerned that this becomes another way people lose their properties versus helping them, as we're doing with the Incremental Development Alliance, learn positive ways to keep their property. If we are going after the banks and the corporations that are allowing, in deep pockets, that are allowing properties to go vacant and in disrepair in our cities, I think that's one avenue. Another avenue, and I don't want that other avenue of unintended consequences to affect folks who are just trying to hang on to property. They want to do something with it, they don't know how.
If they didn't live in it, I think that's when it would be one of those things where,
I'm clear on that.
yeah, this is a way to bring that to their attention, that they need to take care of the property.
Commissioner Granger, the live-in and versus not live-in, I think, is the hang-up. I can give you a great example of a brand-new house that got built 2 years ago, and this woman made me put too many trees in the yard and made me mad, and now she's not taking care of her yard, and it qualifies for code enforcement. And the house looks great, but she lives there. So, but if she didn't live there, either way, the yard is the problem, it's not the house. Okay? And under the way that this is presented to me is, if everything was fine, the yard was pretty, and the house is vacant, it has to go on a registry. But she lives there, and the yard's not not good, and she's still in violation. The catch to me is that you want her to live there or not live there, and the violation is something else other than the vacancy.
No, if they live there, then it defaults to a code compliance issue.
But it's a code compliance issue when they're not there either.
It's just a code compliance issue if they live there. That's my point. So there's an order of operations.
But it's the same if they don't live there. How is it different when they don't live there?
Because something has happened to where this building or this property does not look like somebody's taking care of it. That's the very first thing that has to happen.
Okay.
Somebody has to call it in and say, this property looks like nobody's taking care of it, regardless if anybody lives in it or not.
So far, that's exactly how it happens today.
Yes, and then what happens is that code compliance then goes and tries to make contact with whoever owns the property or lives at the property, if anybody lives at the property.
Okay.
Right? So if somebody is there living at the property and they're legally allowed to live there, they're not transients or squatters, then it just immediately defaults into code compliance. Like there's no reason for a registry because there's a person who lives here that the code compliance can interact with.
Okay.
But if there's no one that lives there, and again it looks like nobody is taking care of the property, well then now they can try to make some reasonable attempts to contact the owner, and if they cannot, well then hey, we're going to deem it a vacant property, and now you've got to be on the registry.
What percentage of vacant properties can you not find the owner because you send certified receipt mail?
We send certified mail to owners,
They
but
haven't been notified.
How many do you not
Let's
find?
go with that.
But like the percentage, I can't say there's a percentage, but I can tell you that a lot of the vacant properties in the city that are cited with code enforcement hearings, there are no owners that appear. So, and we've never had contact with those owners.
Okay, and is there a process of how you move forward in the code if you cannot contact them?
Of course.
Do the
We
work
have
and add it to the tax bill on 10% annual, right?
Well, we get an order from the special magistrate that allows us to abate the nuisance, and if the city abates the nuisance, then we get a second order that imposes the lien on the property. Once we do that, we can collect that lien, only the cost though, through a nuisance assessment, which is on the tax bill. Yes, sir.
Right, so in place already, we have a way to abate the nuisance and a way to get paid back through the tax bill.
And the only issue that we have the majority of the time is a structure. A structure might not be easily abatable because it may require repairs and not demolition.
Or torn down. I mean, do we tear down buildings still?
If it requires demolition, yes, but that's not as many as some of the vacant properties that are just in disrepair.
And how many do you have that are intermittently communicative? Meaning that you reach out to them, it takes a while to find somebody, you finally get a hold of somebody, maybe 60 days before you hear back from them again.
It happens often.
So where you have a situation where maybe you do have a POC, but they're just not adequate. It's just not, they're not taking action, or maybe they do take action, but it is incredibly minimal, and they're just playing a game with you of trying to just drag this thing out as long as possible. How do you run into that?
That does happen. It happens often. A lot of the.
Do you have any tools or anything available to you to help that process?
For contact?
Yeah, for somebody who's trying to draw something out. Or would it be more beneficial to you if there was somebody local who was identified to be the person who was allowed to make decisions for the property?
I think it is beneficial to have someone local because they're here, they see the property on a regular basis. The out-of-town owners are quite often, they have lives other places. They have businesses other places, and they're busy other places, so.
And I believe Florida law says if you're going to do that for somebody else, you have to have a real estate license to do that, right?
That I would have to look into.
Okay.
I can promise you that out-of-town owners and out-of-town banks and out-of-town mortgage or foreclosure mills are not interested in getting on a registry. I've been through this twice now, and they're interested in getting the house on the market and getting it going, and not interacting with, I got to worry about 30 or 60 days there, and it's going to take a minute because they're in the lawsuit. I think we're barking up a tree that we just don't need to. We've got a code department that has a path towards making these properties optically look good from the outside, and that's the goal here. And I think if we need to beef that section up, we can do that. But I don't know that we need to have government outreach come in and say, you must do this, because it's my private property, and I'm going to tell you what you got to do with it. I can't get on board with that.
I agree with what Commissioner Hughes just said, and I also want to draw our attention to the last sentence of purpose and intent. And the intent is a registration program as a mechanism to help protect neighborhoods from becoming blighted through the lack of adequate maintenance of properties that are in foreclosure or foreclosed. So the rest of this ordinance, as I read it, addresses that part of the purpose and intent. But it continues to say, and equally, to provide a mechanism to avert foreclosure actions through timely intervention, education, or counseling of property owners. And I see no evidence of that part of the purpose and intent reflected in the current ordinance before us. And that would be the concern that I have. Someone who's already under foreclosure, if we're talking about the mortgage holder, doesn't have another $500 to register, and they're already on a different path, as Commissioner Hughes has said. And this just speeds up the process, I think, at which properties can be taken. And my concern are the folk who aren't the corporations and the banks and the deep pockets that perhaps you're going after.
But in order to foreclose a property, you have to go file in county court and say, I own or I have the mortgage on this property. I want to foreclose on it because I haven't been paid. And that's who would wind up paying the fee to get on the list, not who currently is late or behind on the mortgage. Generally speaking, in a foreclosure process, there's no nothing asked of the person who has taken out the mortgage other than just to pay the mortgage.
Whoever buys that house will pay the registration fee, they'll pay the semi-annual fee, because all that fee will be passed straight down to whoever that new purchaser is. It just made it, I promise you, attorney's fees. The reason that you want to stop the foreclosure when you can, if you get an offer in the middle of it, is to stop the attorney's fees from happening. Sorry about that.
Yeah, if you're the bank.
And so, and sometimes they will do that, because all the attorneys want to do is continue to bill.
Yeah.
If you get the bank to okay that, now you can have a negotiation, and then now you're paying this amount of attorney's fees, and who pays it is the buyer. That it all flows through to the homeowner that's coming into that deal. I promise you.
Maybe if there's enough meat on the bone. I don't think a bank is going to be able to sell a foreclosed property for more than market value.
Every dollar that they spend, they'll get back.
Yeah.
Because remember, they're getting it at less than market value. If it's worth 300 and the mortgage balance is 180, so they're into it for 180.
You're basically arguing for the bank at this point.
No, I'm not arguing for the bank. I'm saying it's a negative to the next homeowner. Whoever buys that foreclosure property is going to pay the fees that we are charging that foreclosure company.
They're going to pay market value of the house. Or if it goes to auction, they'll just pay auction, whatever they get into the auction.
Right. Plus the fee,
they won't pay the fees on top of that.
Okay.
I mean, I've gone through this process. I've never had to pay fees for a foreclosure before. Like that doesn't, there's value. Well, maybe you're assuming it is. It might not be. You don't know exactly what the bank, if you have a $500,000 house that forecloses, and the remainder on the loan is $400,000, but the current market only supports it to be at $410,000, and we've seen that recently. We've seen that in like 2007, 2008 timeframe. You're not going to be able to sell that house for 500 plus. You're not going to be able to.
It turns into a short sale, and the buyer pays all the fees on the short sale. Went through that one too, and no.
Well, that's to avoid a foreclosure.
So,
I'm just,
go ahead.
to provide a mechanism to avert foreclosure actions, how is that addressed in this ordinance?
I think this ordinance is a mishmash of two different ordinances, to be honest with you. And I think it would be very helpful to the board if we had the original two, or at least the original one, from what's their name?
From the Hera Registry?
Yes, if we could. if we
I
could
can
just
send
get
you a red line to show you what changes we made throughout so that you can see exactly what was revised, what was stricken from the original ordinance.
Yeah,
I
so
can
it
email
doesn't
them.
sound like we have enough momentum to, the direction I would say is if we want to continue this, come back with case, like examples of ways that a story would play out for different homeowners or property owners so that we can all understand it, break it down to smaller problems. and
Okay,
potentially bring it
I
back.
have a question, just as an
And
example.
case studies, call other cities and bring those letters back to us of, here's how this city did it.
Yeah,
Here's
it's been successful in other
The
cities.
diesel
Yeah.
shop, it's vacant. We own it. Who's paying the fee
Is it,
under that?
does it look derelict? Is the grass not being mowed?
Well, according
Is the windows?
So the answer is yes.
Sorry.
It's in preparation for demo. So the,
Okay, but
yeah.
what's in that point? There's not a caveat for preparation for demo or being remodeled or it's vacant. It's commercial.
I agree.
It's
That needs to be
derby.
clear.
Yeah.
Okay, see? And so who pays that fee? Do we register that fee? Does
My argument was it shouldn't be set up for something that's set for demolition and we're pulling permits for demolition. That shouldn't be part of this.
Okay.
I don't think it would. I think if code compliance saw that there was a demolition permit pulled, they would go, yeah, this is not a vacant building. All this is going to be decided a lot by code compliance based on the matter at hand.
I like the idea of trying to focus it in narrowed areas and trying to maybe find a consensus doing that.
I can support that. I'm also just trying to solve for, we've got a lot of great neighbors and they take care of their houses and there's a house that's under foreclosure and the grass is not mowed and and code compliance then has to chase a bunch of people down, which waste a lot of their time and effort. So,
Okay. Item 13E, let's go and close the discussion. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Ooh, Randy, you were off.